Good morning, everyone. I am calling this meeting to order, and thank you all for being here. And do you all have a copy of the agenda? Okay, good. Okay, so I've called this meeting to order, and we will now do the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, yeah. Mira. Ms. Becky, roll call.
Board Member Quintero. Board Member Dallahan is absent. Board Member Betastuve.
Present.
Board Member Gonzalez.
Present.
Board Member Ellens is absent. Board Member Dallahan is present. Board Member Gandara.
Here.
Board Member Sanchez.
Present.
Chairperson Flores.
Present. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair, Clint Thacker, Animal Service Center, Mesilla Valley, Executive Director. Yes, we do have some changes to the agenda. The one is going to be under committee reports. Number 3, facilities. Commissioner Sanchez, Board Member Sanchez, is not the committee chair. I am going to be taking the duty of reporting on that today.
Would you please run that by me again?
Yes, under reports presentations, C, committee reports. Number 3 is facilities.
Are you talking about item 5?
5C3. Sure. I have
Okay.
C, C3. Under facilities, Manuel Sanchez is not the committee chair of that committee.
You are.
No, but I'm going to be taking care of that report today.
Who is the committee chair, do you know?
That is unclear. In the minutes, it just states who is on the committee. It does not state who is the chair.
Who determines who the chair is? The committee?
The committee.
So will the committee be meeting soon?
Yes, they will.
Will you then decide as a committee who the chair will be?
Yes, we will.
So for today's purposes, you're the acting committee chair presenting?
I would love to. If that's within my right or your right to claim me as that, I would love to.
Well, that sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's all.
And that's it? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other changes? Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to the minutes. Do I make my announcement now? Okay. So in review of the minutes, I saw that at page 3, line 37, there was something missing. And what was missing was that the Mayor Pro Tem Gandara requested an audit based on the that's under discussion items, beginning at line 26, page 3, line 26, the personnel shortfall issue. So I want to make sure that the minutes reflect that request was made. And since you're here, Mayor Pro Tem Gandara, did you request a financial audit or an independent audit of that issue?
Financial audit.
Financial. Great. So,
Madam Chair, just for clarification, I believe what's in the meeting packet or the agenda packet, it's actually on page 4 under discussion items, I believe, right? You're talking discussion items, section A. You're page 3, I believe.
oh, okay. Page 3, you're looking at A, action items, page 3.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Madam Chair. So I think we're on the agenda packet, it's page 4, beginning at line 14.
Madam Chair.
This one, we have different, it's a different page just because yours is longer.
Okay. So were you telling me that this
It's
was
right here.
covered?
Right here, page 4.
Happening again? It's happening again, the budget will be broken into parts, one big one.
Yes.
No, she actually asked for an audit.
Correct. I just want to say,
Oh, no.
I just meant, I was just bringing it up for discussion purposes so that people were following from if they had the agenda packet.
Oh, excuse me. I see
No
what you're
problem.
saying.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. Or Vice Chair Sanchez. Okay, all these labels. Okay, so yes, I have the original, so forgive my error. Are there any other changes to the minutes or additions or clarifications? Okay, Becky?
Madam Chair, I'd motion that we approve the minutes from the board meeting on January 23rd, 2020, as with the requested amendments.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So moved and second. Any discussion? No discussion on that. Becky?
Board Member Abeta Stuve,
Yes.
Board Member Gondara,
Yes.
Board Member Sanchez,
Yes.
Chairperson Flores.
Yes.
Please note, for the record, Mr. Ellens has arrived.
We'll go on to item 5 on the agenda, reports and presentations. The first one is City and County ACO reports, City Animal Control and County Animal Control.
Good morning, Council.
Good morning.
Can you state your name for the record, too, please?
I'm Officer Lawrence, Senior ACO.
Can you find it?
What was your first name, sir?
William Lawrence.
Thank you.
Where's it at?
The little file on the bottom, right there.
JPA. No. Go to. Wait. No, that's not it.
It's this one right here.
It's not going to be January.
Yeah.
Good morning, board members. Mary Lou Ward, Doñana County Animal Control and Code Supervisor. I'll be here just in case we have any questions as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll be presenting our stats for the month of January of this year.
You can hit F5, hit the enabling edit button up at the top on the ribbon with the mouse, and then hit F5. You've got to do the white box that says enable editing. Keep going right and down just a little.
Oh,
Then you can hit F5 and it'll do your PowerPoint.
okay, so for the month of January, we picked up a total of 221 animals, with 196 of them going to the Animal Service Center in Mesilla Valley. Of those animals, we had a total of 9 owner-released dogs, 1 owner-release of a cat, 133 stray dogs, 42 stray cats, 2 care and welfare holds, 8 injured animals, and we had 1 rabies quarantine at the shelter. And on top of that, we had 2 quarantine holds at our court hold facility, and we had 1 as well for a cruelty hold. So our total number of animals at the shelter were 196. Of those that are not counted were the 21 dead animals, and we had 1 snake call. For the infield return to owners, we were able to return home 58 animals. We scanned a total of 255. Of course, we don't scan the snakes, livestock, any vicious animals, and some dead animals that we can't. We found 58 microchips, resulting in the 58 return to owners. So our types of calls for the month, we responded to 839. Of those calls, we had a total of 29 injured animals, 13 cruelty calls, 58 vicious animals, 17 bites. We were able to get compliance, or we educated the public on 74 licensing and microchips, as well as 60 permits, 77 rabies vaccinations, and 34 care and maintenance or other ordinance violations. We also went to court on 20 cases, and of those cases, we had 26 charges that resulted in 49.5 hours plus 13 hours, and of those hours, there was also 13 hours of overtime. We had one warrant that was issued. We had 6 guilty pleas, and of those guilty pleas, we were able to get a total of $600 of donations to the Animal Service Center in Mesilla Valley. We had 41 dismissed due to compliance, or I'm sorry, 4 dismissed for compliance, and we had a 1 deferred sentence. So for our continued spay and neuter project, our reported numbers that are up to date, we have a total of 183 cats that have been fixed and 379 dogs. We have redeemed a total of 562 SNAP vouchers. For our continued educational outreach,
Was that redemption just for the month or to date?
that's to date.
Okay.
For our continued educational outreach and ACES project, we have concentrated on the Placitas area. We have done 87 self-initiated properties. We saw an increase of 16% in compliance. We picked up a total of 6.01 tons of trash. And for our operational community sweep in Placitas, we visited 119 homes. We have found 49 violations, and at this point, we're still pending compliance and issuing citations. And that's all we got for today. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Why do you do trash collection? I mean, thank you, but, I mean, is that part of your job description or part of the duties that?
I can answer that, because we're animal control and codes enforcement, and part of our overall goal is voluntary compliance and environmental safety. And with that, we are also involved with grants and illegal dumping partnerships. And so with the trash, we don't actually collect the trash, but that's the community that's cleaning up the trash. So we go out, and when we do these ACES projects, we start out by going into the communities, by going door to door and educating the communities on the violations we see. So it's an animal control officer, it's a codes officer, it's planning and zoning. We go door to door and we educate them on whatever we're seeing in violation. We give them a way to come in compliance. So we go back and we let them know that there's going to be a roll-off in their community that's funded through a grant process. And that roll-off will come back to that community and give them a way to come in compliance for free. So instead of saying, hey, you've got all this trash in on your property, and more than likely it'll end up in the desert because these are rural areas, it'll end up in the right place, which is in a dumpster. And so those are the tonnage that's been reported, that we've been putting out the containers that the communities have been cleaning up.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. And that, so the 119 homes that you visited is part of that?
That's the 119 homes is separate from the ACES. We have 2 projects going on. We have our ACES projects, which is our Animal Control and Code Enforcement Environmental Survey. And then separately from that, we've started a separate project called our Operation Community Sweep. And that is more of a, it's an education, but it's more of a, I'm going to hold you I'm going to hold you accountable type of project. And so it will hinder some citations out of that, depending on the circumstances.
And so do you go back to check whether they've complied?
So for the ACES, like the ACES will have our initial project. We offer the resource to come into compliance. Then the following month, we go back to that same community, and then we look at whatever the violations are. That also gives us something measurable. Where I can give you this 16% increase in compliance, or did we not see any compliance? That allows me to have something that actually can be measured on our success rate and see what we have.
Thank you, Ms. Warden. Thank you, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank
Any
you.
questions at this point?
Chair?
I think I saw Mr. Allen's light. Oh, Mr. Gonzalez had his light first? Okay. Mr. Gonzalez?
Mary Lou, in regard to your grants, how successful have you been with them?
Excuse me,
In
sir?
reaching out to your grants, how
We've-
successful have they been?
Very good. We've got the RAID grant, was the first initial grant we applied for. That was several years ago. That was through our department, applied for it ourselves, and we got awarded it on our first try. And that was to promote our Carlos the Coyote, the actual calendar that was put out there, the recycling fun fact calendar. And it actually paid for Lizzie the Lizard costume that you see out there. All the costumes, the comic books, the books, everything that you see is paid for through the flow control money, which is the environmental money that we have for the county for the illegal dumping partnership. So that has funded a lot of these outreach programs, because that money has earmarked for outreach for the community, but it also has given us the opportunity to obtain extra equipment and things that we need for the codes department, and a lead position for the codes department, which we would not have been able to do because of that.
How many grants do you have?
Right now, our department is housing the Keep America Beautiful grant, and then we are also housing this flow control. I call it flow control, which is the solid waste.
Just those two?
Yes, sir.
In the Keep America Beautiful, how often you guys do this?
The Keep America Beautiful is something that is applied for once a year, and every year it changes. Their scope changes every year. So this past year it changes as a beautification. So it looks at a beautification, so it mostly goes towards New Mexico True. And so right now we're looking at beautification projects throughout the community, and that's how we're in alignment with that grant.
Do you go basically to all the towns in the county?
Absolutely.
Hit every one of them.
Yeah, that's where La Mesa, if you look at La Mesa, the ballpark in La Mesa got cleaned up. We had the beautification of the ballpark where the mural got put up with the painting of that. That came from the Mexico True, the grant.
Okay, I see the one in Mesquite and Chamberino, Lañón. Have you been a little bit down to Anapra? Or no, that basic, I'm sorry, that's municipal, that's city. Yeah, so we don't touch that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, if I might, I don't have a question.
Yes,
We have a new
Commissioner.
We have a new ex officio member from the county. Jeannie, could you introduce yourself if you already haven't been?
I'm Jeannie Quintero, and I'm right now doing a collateral duty as the interim manager over codes, but my actual job position with the county is a staff attorney.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Allens. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Lawrence, and thank you for assisting Supervisor Ward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
guys.
welcome.
You guys have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Gino Jimenez. I'm the Animal Control Supervisor for the City of Las Cruces. I'm going to present you the numbers for January 2020. So for January 2020, we responded to 543 reported strays. Of those, 294 were GOA, meaning the officer didn't have any contact with that animal. We were able to apprehend 249. If you look at the numbers that were taken to the shelter, were a total of 220. 144 of them were dogs, and 76 were cats. We were able to field RTO 29 animals, and we were unsuccessful in 24. That brings our total to 53 identifiable animals. Here is our 3-year comparison for our stray calls. As you can see, we're pretty consistent as for the past 3 years. As far as our 3-year comparison for field RTOs, last month we were considerably lower than the 2 previous years. And this next slide was at the request of Board Member Sanchez. This is our 2018-2019 identifiable animal comparison. Across the board, I mean, we're only off by 50 from one year to the next. I can't explain that high number in 2018 where we had 113, and then come January, the following month, we had 114 identifiable animals. I can't explain that spike, but it was there for December and January. Moving on, the reasons for owner releasing animals. These are the reasons that citizens gave us for giving up their animals. One was for moving, could not take the dog with them. Another one was killed another dog. That was 2 dogs that were taken to the Animal Service Center for an euthanasia request. One was the owner was arrested. Of course, he could not care for himself or the dog. One was unable to feed or get veterinary care for their animals. That was 2 that were owner released. Another one was a dog keeps escaping and has now bitten, so they no longer wanted that animal. And another one is overwhelmed with puppies and feces. They owner released a total of 8. Another one was a rental. They were moving into a rental property that would not allow dogs, so they owner released 2. And finally, the citizen felt that she was too old to handle a large dog, so she owner released that animal. In this next slide, you'll see the reasons why we were unable to field RTO. 19 of those, there was no contact by phone or at the residence. Typically, that tells me that they may have been at work, unavailable, couldn't get off work to come home. Multiple reasons. Phone number's not correct, address, they've moved, and the chip may have not been updated. Many, many reasons. One was an owner that was unable to leave work, even though the officer made contact with them to let them know that we had picked up their animal. They were unable to leave work to come do a field RTO. Another one was the owner was out of town for a total of 3 dogs to that same owner. One, the only identifiable trait or marks on that animal was a rabies tag. The vet office was closed at that time. Another one was a chip that was registered to a local vet, and again, the office was closed. Those 2 came at my night crew. So those impounds were done after business hours for that veterinarian. And then finally, 1 chip was registered to the Animal Service Center. However, no owner information was provided on that microchip information. Here is my stray map as requested. However, we're having some connectivity issues between my computer at my office and this computer. We're trying to work that out with IT. So what I can do is next month present January and February's maps. But as of right as I was coming up here, we were still trying to work on it. So not able to present the stray maps. However, this is a screenshot of the impounds. I know it's not very clear, but this is a screenshot of the maps of that map for all our impounds of January 2020 within the city. Once that connectivity issue is taken care of, I can actually zoom in and out on a particular district or zone, if you will. But this is an accurate map of
Madam
that.
Chair, what's the difference between the blue squares and the red squares?
Madam Chair, Board Member Allens, the blue squares are dogs, the orange squares are cats, and the red squares are other. So that could be anything other than a cat and a dog. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner?
Mr. Jimenez, I want to say I appreciate you getting that information on the RTOs. I'm actually surprised that relatively, I mean, I guess I was a little just surprised at how, for the most part, it's consistent in terms of field RTOs, or at least the identification. So there you go. Yeah, I wish, or at least in comparison to the previous slide, I think, and it just happens, I think this month we were very close between the county and the city in terms of the number of identifiable animals. So I wish, I said, if there's something that sticks out and in the future, I would love to see that, but I don't know that, at least for that chart, and I appreciate you pulling it together. I don't know that I will need, to have that continuously, because I think as long as you have the continued numbers, I'm okay with it, unless the rest of the board wants to continue to see that graph. I just hate to, I appreciate you pulling it for this meeting. I just wouldn't want to create continued work unless something really pops out.
Absolutely, sir. And I did that because at your request, and I know that you had only requested 2018, 2019 comparison. So it's really, we already keep that number right here on my slide number 2 at the bottom. It shows the identifiable animals. Correct. But I can see where you were requesting that comparison month to month for those past 2 years.
Correct. Now, and that's exactly why I was kind of curious to see what the trends were. And they're so close between 2018, 2019, except for that blip that you mentioned in December of 2018. Like I said, if based off of what I'm seeing here, I was just kind of curious to see what it looked like when it was trended out. There's nothing, at least to me, aside from those outliers. It's very consistent, and unless we have something that's a game changer that all of a sudden creates opportunities to see this increase significantly, I think I appreciate you pulling this together for me, and I don't know that I'll have to, continue to see this on the slide unless unless the rest of the board wants to continue seeing it. I just don't want to create more work. I just wanted to, like I said, see this trended out over the last couple of years.
And I appreciate you making that request, because it gives me something else to look at, because if we look at our trend, if we continually going up, let's just say 50 every year, that means that we're getting more animals identified, slowly, but it's happening. So I'll keep that up, and whenever it's requested by any member of the board, I will be able to pull it up.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. Mayor Pro Tem Gandara?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Could you go back to your slide, page 2? Unsuccessful. Oh, yeah. Unsuccessful attempted field returns impounded at the shelter. And then your slide 3 talks specifically about what those. Oh, no. You had another slide. 4.
Right there?
No, keep going. These.
These.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So unsuccessful. These are the reasons why?
Yes.
And so is there a liability if you, I'm concerned about owner unable to leave work. Is there a liability when you talk to these individuals to leave the animal at the house?
Well, Madam Chair, Board Member Gandara, yes, because there's no way for us to verify or to confirm that animal is going to stay there without some sort of supervision, because obviously it got out while the owner was away.
Yeah.
So just to put it back in the yard without being able to confirm or be positive that that animal's going to stay there for the meanwhile till they get home is a liability for us.
So of those 20, the 19 no contact by phone or at residence, obviously they had identification, right? You made the calls, there was no answer. Now, of those 20 that go to the center, are the owners picking them up? Can we dig a little deeper to see of those 20 if they're being picked up, or are they still at the center? Would be my question. And sort of combining your efforts to figure out, are they coming to pick them up? And if not, why not? And then let's see. Who is working on, when you call your night crew, you said there was chips, call the local veterinarian, the office was closed, or a rabies tag, the office was closed. Are you still then the next morning picking, calling, or does that go to the center's responsibility of calling? And of those, because those to me seem easier, right? To contact the owner and say, come and get them. What can we do to get your animals back to you?
Madam Chair, Board Member Gandara, in that instance or that scenario, because there was no way to contact the dog owner, the animal owner, then the animal would automatically be taken to the animal shelter, because I think we've been programmed that if you're missing an animal, the first place to look is at the shelter, is at the service center. So once that animal is taken by animal control to the service center, all that information is added into their shelter love program. And then as ASC shelter staff updates it, they'll see that we tried to make contact initially, there was none, and I'm sure would try again. That way that animal isn't staying there for hopefully a prolonged period of time.
I guess what I'm asking is to tighten up a little more in terms of on these night shifts. If the veterinarian isn't there, right? I don't understand why we don't know who the animal belongs to, and it's registered to a veterinarian, right? Our process isn't working if the veterinarian doesn't turn around and say, register on your own animal, right?
Right.
So I know they're very slim numbers, but I think in terms of coordinating and collaborating with each other and the veterinarian world, every little bit helps, right, to get the animals out of the shelter or not come into the shelter, because they stay there, right? People don't want to pay for various reasons, right? Maybe they can't afford to, those kinds of things. So I'm asking to have a little more communication with each other in terms of what these numbers really mean, connecting the center to say, did the owner come and pick them up?
Sure.
I don't know how difficult that is to do that, but I'm assuming you guys are in communication with each other, and we just have to come together, work together, I think more fiercely, right, to ensure that these animals don't sit at the center.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that's it. Issues with connectivity. Sorry.
Yes.
How are we going to? I know you had said you were working with IT, but that seems to continue to be an issue, right?
And Madam Board Member Gandara, the reason is because I do that work on my computer,
I know.
and this computer here is only for presentations. So I have to kind of bypass the system and get into an Outlook here to try to upload it. However, this morning, this computer wouldn't recognize my passwords. So that was the issue this morning with that map.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Gino.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Abeta Stuvey?
Thank you. My questions are actually very similar to Board Member Gondara's, and they were satisfied, so thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez?
In your report, do you have a good connection with the animal shelter in regard to the follow-up calls with the owners?
I'm sorry, sir.
You have follow-up calls with the owners after they're taken into the shelter?
We do not, sir. No.
So it's just physically, Clint, that is when you guys have follow-up calls with the owners? And it's pretty quickly done.
Clint Thacker, Animal Service Executive Director. Yes, we do within that time, whenever the animal is impounded. If it's overnight, we do it the next day, that morning. We also have capability to know if we heard from them or not, and then we can continue to follow up until we get either a letter sent, at the very least, the last known address. So yeah, it's a continual follow-up process.
Well, I see that you do also a letter. Oh, awesome. Okay, good job. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. I have a question.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
similar to the one that Mayor Pro Tem Gandara brought up. So when the vet office is closed, do you call again? I mean, you have an ID tag, say the rabies tag only, but that vet office is closed, so the doggy or the kitty or the animal just gets thrown into the center and there's no follow-up? Oh, excuse me, I see. So just for the record, Director Thacker is saying that the center does follow up on that.
Yes, ma'am.
That codes doesn't, but the center does. That's good. Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you very much,
You're
Gino.
welcome.
Or Officer Jimenez.
It's okay.
The next item is our shelter statistics and activities by Clint Thacker.
Madam Chair, board members, thank you very much for this chance to be here today to talk to you about our happenings in our month of January for the Animal Service Center in Mesilla Valley. Currently, as of yesterday, we have 443 animals in the center compared to the 505 that we were there in 2019 in the same time period. Our intake for 2020 is 674 animals, broken down to 418 cats and 486 dogs and 187 cats. So we have less animals of each, you see there, compared to 2019.
Clint, can you go back?
Maybe.
So 2020 dogs, you have 486.
Yes.
2019, you have 418. So you do have more dogs, but fewer cats.
Yes, thank you
Okay,
for the
okay, sorry.
clarification.
All right.
Apologize for that, thank you. For 2020, 298 adoptions, 93 reclaims, 261 rescued, 39 community cats, 100 euthanasia, for a live release rate for the month of January at 87.4. So quite a bit higher than what we had in 2019. And again, our benchmark that we like to reach for is 90%. The 90% is in the industry qualifies as a no-kill center. It's not saying we're not going to kill any animals. It's saying that 90% of our animals came in, left alive, and that's the percentage that we always strive for. So we were very close in 2020, which I'm very proud of our staff for doing that.
Madam Chair? Sorry.
Yes, Commissioner Sanchez.
Mr. Thacker, I just had a quick question. When we look at the euthanasia and your live release rates, if there's any owner surrenders or an owner requests the euthanasia, does that hit? Okay. I didn't know if that would hit the number for euthanasia.
No.
Thank you, sir.
We did 376 surgeries in 2020, broken down there. Total visitors is 2,552, pretty much the same as compared to last January. And that is all for the month. However, we have another one for your viewing pleasure. we have our annual report. Bernice is going to pass that out to you. This report is done every year in January or February. It does the numbers and the report for the center for the entire year. The information I'm going to be presenting are the same graphs and items that you have in your paper. I know you're going to be tempted to look through that, but the packet you have is just more information of the graphs and things that I'm going to talk about here in the presentation. So our method of intakes continued, our highest method of intake continues to be stray animals. We did 3,030 for dogs and 2,388 for cats. That again, it's our biggest is the strays. Interesting enough, the strays coming from the public is our second highest. And then close there behind is our owner surrenders, which is an incredibly large number at the 1,268. And we are hopefully going to be making a decrease in that. I say hopefully because in this coming year, we are going to start doing some different things. For instance, a controlled intake process where individuals have to make an appointment if they want to surrender their animal, and they have to talk to us and they have to give a reason why they're surrendering it. And we do have some work still to do on that. Our staff is going to be going to some training. It's going to be provided by Best Friends Animal Society. And also, we need to build up some resources. So if somebody says, well, I just can't afford to feed my dog, then that's when we would reach out to another rescue, like a food bank for animals, and say, why don't you get some free food, help you through this hard time you're having. Anything we can do to keep the animal out of the center. Now, if they just say flat out, no, I don't want it, and they continue to say, no, I don't want it, and there's nothing we can do, of course, we're going to take their animal. We're not going to have them take matters into their own hands. It's just anything that we can do to curb that 1,268 animals coming in will be beneficial to the center.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Owens.
Cliff, what's the difference between strays animal control and strays public?
The strays public are animals that are brought in by the public. So I found this dog wandering loose, and they bring it. Whereas the ACOs, they've got a report of a call, or they see the animal loose, and they bring it to us.
All right, thank you.
So a total intake comparison, we went down from last year, about 600 animals, 500 animals there. You'll see 2018 was 10,626, and we dropped down to 10,281. Since 2015, it's been pretty consistent. So again, we need to continue to, we need to do something different. And you're going to see, I'm going to continue to repeat that mantra throughout the coming year. Whenever somebody or some of my staff thinks of something for us to do, we're going to try it because we want to decrease these numbers that are obviously holding steady since 2015. Our monthly intake continues the trend that we always have and has been everywhere I've always been is higher in the summertime and fall and trends down in the winter months. I don't think there's anything we can do to stay that. It's just the way that people work. They're out and about more. They're more active in the summertime. They see more, and they're active with their animals more, which means more animals are loose. So it just continues to be a regular trend in the entire industry for them. Our species intake, again, dogs are over half of our intake for annual at 58.0%, and then 40.3% for the cats. Now our outcome statistics. What outcome means is animals, how they left the center, whether it be through adoptions, euthanasia, reclaims by owners, or rescue transfers, and so on. This is a great slide that sums everything up. We adopted out 27% of all of the intake that came in. We transferred to rescue organizations. And these are organizations that can hold on to animals longer than we can. Some rescue organizations are specific, like they like to have golden retrievers. Or we have rescues that are saying, we'll take anything and everything, dogs and cats. We have some cat specific, some dog specific. So we value these organizations. Without this help, we would never be able to get to the live release rate and also successfully fulfill our mission without them. So you see that they did 27% of our intake. We euthanized 18%. Only 12% were returned to owners, which is, again, something we like to continue to work on. Expired in the shelter, we had just over 2% of animals pass away in the shelter. Expired in foster was 1.7%. We had less than 1% go stolen or missing. That does happen. Individuals come in, they want to look at a dog, and they take it. Or have instances of animals that are in foster care, and we try to call them and to get appointments for them to bring the animal to an event. Well, phone number's disconnected, gone, and they have the animal. So that does occur. It's less than 1% of our intake, but it does. And then wildlife release is less than 0.5% at 0.3%. So our adoptions is the highlight of 2019. We did incredible. We did over 2,804. It's the highest ever in the history since 2008 of adoptions at the Animal Center. When we look at some things that I talked to Bernice about this briefly, we looked at the differences that we did compared, and the big one is we lowered our adoption price. So if you remember in 2018 when I came to you and I said we took our adoptions and we averaged them out of all the specials that we were doing, and it came to $25. So my proposal to the board is why don't we just reduce the adoption fee to $25, and we'll continue to have specials and highlights, but for the majority it'll be $25, and that's the difference that we've seen. That and the new face of the center. It's no longer kind of a drudgy place to be there. It's a place that people enjoy. We still get comments continually throughout the day of, this is a gorgeous place, I love to be here, and we're proud of that. So that's, we contribute those changes, the 2,804, highest it's ever been. Again, dogs continue to be our highest adoption rate at 62%. Cats came in at 34%, and other is 4%, and other is anything but cats and dogs. We get guinea pigs and lizards and fish and gerbils and anything else. We actually had rats that came in, and that was always fun because we lost them. So they were running around the center. But we got them back, don't worry. It's not one of the missings. But it was a fun time in the center. It was a pretty stressful week, wasn't it, Bernice? I think we're going to find a domesticated rat anywhere. But luckily, they're very friendly. Now, rescues. This is an interesting story. Animal transfers as rescues. We dipped down the lowest it's been since 2017. However, in 2016, compared to it, we did really well. When talking to our rescue coordinators, adoption coordinators, we agreed that this was due, one large reason is because of the sickness that we had in the summertime with distemper. And the rescues all but shut down. They, of course, I don't blame them. They did not want a sickness such as distemper to be there. Once we got that back under control to a point where and we actually shut them down as well. We said only local and only on animals that we know for sure don't have that. So we are still doing small amounts of rescues into individuals here locally. But once we got under control, we continue to do the large scale transfers to places. We're talking 45, 50 at a time. And we were able to reinstate those and get them going. The other is we have a vastly larger amount of people or organizations we rescue too. However, compared to the years past, they're full. It was a huge issue of even the breed specifics that usually move animals very quickly. They were full. So the golden retriever rescues, the Aussie rescues, all these rescues continue to tell us that they were full. So those are contributed. 2,800 animals is still an incredible number for a center of our size and our employee size of 2 individuals that work on it. So I applaud them for the efforts, and I thank them very much for their hard work. Appreciate that. Oftentimes, our coordinators are the ones that actually do the driving. So we appreciate that. This is our live release rate. You see in 2018 for dogs, it was 80%, and cats 73. 2019, we were at 82% for dogs, 79% for cats. But the one over on the right is one I'm very proud of. 2018, we were at 77.5% for a live release rate. Well, we were able to increase that to 80.9%. I think we should call it 81 if we're going to, round up. So 2019, 81%. That's only 9% away from qualifying as a no-kill center. Compared to what we came into when I came in 2017, the previous director, Dr. Beth, did a good job of getting the numbers down. If you look at where she took over in 2008, you were euthanizing 10,000 animals. And we're down now to less than, or 9% away from a live release rate. So we applaud both efforts, and we'll continue to push. This is not something that once we hit 90%, we're going to end. So we are grateful for that. So 81% for 2019, a live release rate. Our euthanasia breakdown, we continue to take our transparency very seriously. And again, all these numbers that I'm talking to you about today are also posted on our Facebook pages on a daily basis. So if you have liked us on Facebook, you'll see that we're specific on our euthanasias as well. But the number one reason is respiratory signs, and the TX is for treatment, meaning they had treatment and they didn't respond to the treatment. So we decided for that. So 204. I'll just do a few of the high numbers here. Medical general is 177. That is just a general medical reason of why it needed to be done. And then behavior aggressive dog. Animal or dogs have a hard time in the center. They really do. You can imagine that if you communicate with sight, sense, and smell, all those are being harassed and attacked every second of every day inside of a shelter. And so it is behavior and aggressive issues are going to come out on those animals. And then ringworm is the next one, and that's most for the cats. Ringworm is hard to get rid of. We do treat it. We have a ringworm ward, and we do adopt out of that ward when needed. Individuals, it's easily treated. We have some incredible rescues that do just ringworms that help us with that. But again, that was one of the higher ones for euthanasia. And then space medical, what that means is animals have a medical issue that we would usually treat. However, it is for space. The reason why we're looking at those animals is because we are out of space, but they're euthanized because they have a medical condition or a medical issue. That's the reason why. So those are some of the highest reasons. Our comparison for euthanasia, like I said, 2018, you'll see that, or 2008, sorry, you'll see that high number of 10,000 animals, and it's gone steadily down in 2019 to 1,875.
Madam Chair, was that high rate?
Yes, Mr. Allens.
That high rate in 2008 and the following years because of overcrowding, by and large?
I can't tell you why. I wasn't here. I do know that is the first year that the JPA was done between the city and the county. Previously, before that, the Doña County Humane Society had control of the center. So 2008 is the first year that we kept, or that the center kept record of that. I mean, I can go back and look at the intake that it was, but I'm assuming that the intake was incredibly high as well, so I'm assuming it's for space.
Ms. Abeyta-Stuvey?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Thacker. If you could go back just one slide, please. On some of these euthanasia breakdowns, do you have it also recorded on, say, for the space medical feral, do you have that broken down into cats and dogs percentage as well?
We can get that to you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thacker, how often do you guys transfer dogs and cats to other states?
Very often, at least every other week.
And what's been the turnout? How many dogs and cats? What's the average that you transfer?
Average is around 55 to 60. Dog-cat combination. More dogs than cats go in there.
Do they call you or you guys call them in regard to this?
Mutual. It could be either way. If they want it, what I'm speaking of most is our partner in Arizona by the name of Halo Animal Rescue. And so they'll contact us. We have it about every other week as a standing arrangement, but they'll call us if they want more. And they'll tell us the number that they're shooting for. I want to tell you, it's really hard to do. It's not like they call and say, hey, we want 50 animals, and we just pick them. It's a lot of work, and so we pick the animals and we send them to them. They pick the animals from there for the ones they want, and if it's not 50, then we have to come back and find some more, and this is continual back and forth of what they want, because honestly, they are a rescue, and that's how they fund their rescue, is selling adoptable animals.
Okay.
So,
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Owens.
how successful are you in rescuing pit bulls?
well, rescuing pit bulls. I'd say that, I mean, it's hard to say. We adopt out pit bulls, we rescue out pit bulls. We'll send a picture of a dog to a rescue, and they may take it or they may not. I would probably say it also depends on where it's going too. In Colorado, we have a hard time of moving pit bulls because of the ban that Denver has, and that's given pit bulls a bad stigma. And they already have one as well, but I don't know, it's a hard one to answer. I can get you a number, a percentage of, how many animals that we're sending out that have those breed characteristics. Okay.
Mr. Thacker, apropos of Commissioner Allen's question, do you get requests for specific breeds or mixed breeds that are predominantly?
No, I think we get more of a size, large, medium, or small, is what we get more of.
Thank you.
Yep. So our attendance continues to stabilize after our center was shut down, not shut down, the front lobby from our remodeling. So in 2019, during that remodeling, came as a total of 29,601 for public attendance. And if I remember reading that in your booklet, that averages out to more than 100 per day. And that's just the people that are signing in. Because a family of 5, the mom may just sign in, or the dad, or somebody was there. So I believe it's a lot more than that. We continue to do community outreach. We have Pet of the Week radio. We go on, you'll see there 101 Gold, Magic 105, 99.5. I've been driving when they're on, and I love to hear the stories and the positive way that the DJs speak about us and encouraging people to come to us. We continue to work with the publications, the Sun News and Dog Cruces Magazine, Las Cruces Bulletin, American Classifieds are all great help to us. Actually, I was asked to write an article in the Dog Cruces Magazine, so you'll see that coming out and in the next publication. And then television, we continue to do the releases to all the television ads. I have contacts for all of them. And then social media is our Facebook page is our real way that we get information out. And that's also the ASCMV website where we post on there as well. We have some special events that is a lot of fun. So like in February, we did a Meet Your Match, or we did also Marty Paws. Cat World Domination Day was a fun one. We had cat pictures up everywhere. The Pits for Peace, Holiday Food Drive, Home for the Holidays is always a good one, where we team up with Doña Ana County Humane Society, and they pay for the adoptions. That one usually has the lobby full and a line of people out the door for Home for the Holidays. You'll see some of the great things we do here with the community, and we continue to work with the community. And also want to expand, and this list has also expanded greatly since 2018. Many of the things that people that we have teamed up with have not in the past, so we're grateful for their help and assistance. Here's some educational incentives or initiatives that we continue to work on. Job Shadow is a great one. They come in pretty much free labor is what we have. They come in and help us with everything there at the center. that they're interested in. So they're not always in the kennels. Sometimes we have individuals that are interested in clerical work, so they're in the front and talking with people. That was great there. We continue to have a very aggressive Wilson Binkley advertising campaign. We did suspend that in these last 6 months because of our shortfall issue. However, we look forward to bringing that back up starting in July and attacking it at a new angle. We were pushing numbers and saying, how great and also come and see the changes. Well, we're getting a new center, and we're going to be gearing up for that, and we're also going to be gearing up for spay and neuter initiatives. Just everything we can do to get people to sterilize their pets and to be aware of what we are and what we do. Our volunteer program, September was a big month for our volunteer program. We hired Emily Muir. She's our new volunteer coordinator. Since then, we have seen an influx, large influx of new volunteers. And the cool thing is, it's not just one specific demographic of volunteers. It is all across the spectrum. We have individuals that are senior in age, more seasoned, and we have volunteers that need to have parents come with them. So of all ages, and it's fantastic to see. They provide support both at the shelter and offsite locations. One thing I am excited to announce, hopefully by mid-March, if not sooner, we're going to be doing an online training program for volunteers. Right now, they have to come to an orientation at the center. It's very labor intensive. Parking is a pain. And our coordinator, Emily, it's a burden on her to get that going every single week. So now, starting soon, at our website, there's a link. They can watch the orientation online in their pajamas, get excited about being able to come and volunteer at the center, and show up when they would like to. Just make contact with Emily via email. She'll get an email that it was watched by this individual. So we're grateful for that, for her desire to move forward and to make it better. We are looking and interested in the city of Las Cruces is currently obtaining a volunteer coordinator program, or a volunteer program, able to track volunteers, login information, contact information, hours used, all that. So we won't have to do it by hand anymore for that. So we're excited. We hear that it's in the legal review stage, the contract, the MOU is. So we're looking forward to hearing more about that and getting that going. Here are some pictures of our volunteers doing what they do best, is just loving the animals. And that's the presentation. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chair. Great presentation, Clint.
Thank you.
Awesome. I like the way you guys have presented it. I'd like to make one quick question. On the people that visit the shelter, what's the average of them coming in and adopting a dog or a cat?
I'd have to get the number exactly for you for the average, but I bet we can do it because we have the number of people coming in per month, and we have the number of adoptions per day. However, it may be skewed because some people may see the dog the previous day and come in and get it. They may see it online and come in and get it a different day. So, but I can get you that number if you're interested in it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Yes, Commissioner Sanchez.
So one question, there was a slide, I think, towards the beginning, you talked about outcomes and it had a pie chart. There was about, and if I did my calculations right, there was about 10% or 9% that was missing. And I was curious if that was, whether just kind of a mix of things that just added up to 9%, or was there just numbers that might be slightly off?
I don't think they're slightly off. I think it's numbers that probably weren't in there. Do you know? Can you see my screen now?
Yes. If you go, let me see. If you scroll down, right there, slide 9.
All right. Adopted, transferred to, euthanized, returned, expired. stolen and wildlife missing. So you're stating that those don't equal 100%?
Maybe I inputted them incorrectly, but when I did, I think we came up to about 90% is what I had, and that's what I was wondering, if there was just a bunch of other small numbers that added to that. But
we can review that, because those are all of our outcome options, and it should be equaling to that percentage. So we'll review that and get back to you.
Yeah, and it's not a big deal. I was just kind of curious if where the numbers were, the additional 10%, or if they just made it up. I'm just kind of curious. But I did want to make a comment that something you said in terms of what you're looking at for 2020, and you're going to be looking at ideas that are new and that may come from your organization, and I just want to applaud that. One of the things that I feel too often, and it's not just in government but across many organizations, is that people are too afraid to fail. And when I say that is, you do something new and it's not always going to work, but I think that's how you get to the point that you think outside that box, try something different or new. The only thing I would say or note is that as you go and do this is try to, if you can find a way to document lessons learned, best practices, so that as you go along, one, it's documented so that we don't repeat mistakes, but also if you were to go back and look at it, you can understand what did you learn, was approaching it differently, could have a different outcome, et cetera. So if you can do something like that within the organization, I think that would be great, but I absolutely love the fact that you're looking at other ideas and willing to look at these other options and things we might not have looked at in the past, and don't be afraid to fail. I think, like I said, if something doesn't work, well, you take the next idea up. I think that's how we get a step change in the things that we do every day. So I applaud you all. I think what you've done in 2019, I applaud you for all that, you and your team.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to stress, is that this is a team effort. Even this presentation, Bernice worked very hard on it and presented it. All I have done is stand up here in front of you and spat out the numbers that she's computed. So I want to give special thanks to her for doing our yearly report. And we'll sit down and do the math on this and see where we're wrong, and get the board an updated account on that, or an explanation.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Thacker.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, it is off. It's 90 point something, 90.2. Okay. So we have to watch out with Commissioner Sanchez. He's a numbers guy. It's that MIT training. Any other questions?
Thank God.
Oh,
I do.
Mayor Pro Tem Gandara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Clint, Bernice, all the staff. I know how hard you work and how difficult the work is, especially reading your introductory letter. It was very sad, but yet how true, right? How true. The different cases that are coming in, some are very, very sad, and you can get real angry with humans about how we mistreat our animals, and then all in the same time seeing people who just love their animals, or people who are excited about going over there and rescuing, right, an animal. And so my hat's off to all of you for the work. You should be really, really proud. I know the kind of team that you've developed there, and I'm proud of that. So with that said, now that we have this information, this is golden in my mind, and I would like to recommend and request of the board that we move into a work session to do some strategic planning. I think that's extremely important, having the information that we have. I know that we're having a work session next week on Thursday to talk about the budget, and maybe we need to also do some planning around what our priorities are going to be for the next 5 years. We have a new board. I think this is an important time to really start doing some metrics in terms of, okay, how are we going to affect the change of the live release rate you had talked about? We're just 9% away from this live release rate, right? That we want to 90%, if you will. You have some ideas about spade and neutering, and I feel, I don't know what you have planned for this budget work session, but I really feel we need to have an idea of what our priorities are going to be in order to set the budget, in my mind. So that is my recommendation from my perspective. Thank you.
The resolution that's going to be coming later, you're going to see, is for us to accept the money or the scholarship for the executive leadership certificate that program I was accepted into. One of the things I'm going to leave that program with is a strategic plan. So that would be incredible help with when I'm in the midst of developing it, to sit down and do a work session on that. And that would be invaluable. I'd love that. So absolutely expect that in the future.
Yeah. So I don't know if we can hire a consultant or someone who has sort of that, or from Best Friends, you've gotten a lot of TA from them. And I know that they've come out and sort of looked at the center and the various programming that we have, but I'd like to definitely encourage the board to agree to doing some strategic planning with your staff, with our counterparts out in the community, all the advocates and what. I think that's, again, very important. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Numbers? Sure.
Councilor Flores. Madam Chair.
Oh, excuse me, Ms. Quintero?
Thank you. And Mr. Thacker, thank you for your presentation. I have one question for you regarding, I guess, an aspect of your volunteer program. The magistrate courts, the district courts, and municipal all have the ability to sentence somebody to do community service. And of course, the shelter is on that list of available sites to do that. Is that working out for you? Do you have anyone doing that? And do you do different training with these people than you would for a regular volunteer track?
So community service is something that we enjoy having. We don't plan on them. I bet we have probably a new person every week on average that comes. But again, we don't plan, so we don't schedule them to clean in the kennels or anything like that. Generally, what we do is have them work around the center. Laundry, pick up trash, beautify, landscaping, things like that. So we don't have to do the training for animal handling and things like that with them. Occasionally, if somebody is with us long term, if they have a lot of community service, then we will train them, give them a course on cleaning, and then we can schedule them in there. But again, they're famously, I don't know what the right word to say is, but they're not dependable to show up sometimes. So we have a hard time scheduling around those. It's funny, in the community service, they sign up and they expect to love dogs and kitties all the time. And we give them a pooper scooper and a shovel and say, let's get to work. And so they usually don't last very long.
Yeah, and do you screen them for appropriateness before you would accept them to do community service?
So they have their docket that they were sentenced with, and so no animal abuse and no violent crimes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I believe Bernice wanted to address the numbers.
Bernice Navarro. I just wanted to clarify on those numbers that the percentages, those are the animals, the percentage of, say, the adopted ones. There's the percentage of how many were adopted versus of how many came into the shelter. So it's not of the outcomes or anything. So we had 10,281 that came into the shelter, and 27% of those that came in were adopted out. So.
Thank you, Bernice.
I do have one more thing I'd like to talk to the board about. One of the things that we're looking at changing, and I wanted to notify the board and also get input from the board and also from the public, is breed identification. And breed identification is something that has been changing throughout America, on using it or not. What I'm talking about is you have a small dog that has short hair and has a short tail. Immediately you think Chihuahua. And what is that Chihuahua known for? Annoying, barking, ankle biting, and so on. So we call it a Chihuahua. And now for the rest of that animal's life, it's going to be known as a Chihuahua. And if somebody does not like Chihuahuas, they won't have anything to do with it. Another one is a pit bull. If we say an animal is a pit bull or a pit mix, where in realities it could be a lab mix, it could be a pointer mix, anything, because we're looking at characteristics, the large head, and the smaller body, large chest. So we are dooming that dog to get adopted in probably close to, I don't want to say zero, but that's the majority of our animals in the center that spend a long time are pit and pit mixes, so we say. So I have something here from Maddie's Fund, is a well-known industry, an animal industry, of studies that they do and programs that they have. I'd like to read this to you. It says, 4 Florida shelters, Jacksonville Animal Care and Protective Services, the Jacksonville Humane Society, Marion County Animal Services, and Tallahassee Animal Services participated in a study. 4 staff members at each of the 4 shelters indicated what breeds they thought 30 dogs were, for a total of 16 observers and 120 dogs. Of those 120 dogs, 55 were identified as pit bulls by shelter staff, but only 25 were identified as pit bulls by DNA analysis. So we have 55 animals that staff said are pit bulls, but DNA says only 25 were pit bulls. Additionally, the staff missed identifying 20% of the dogs who were pit bulls by DNA, while only 8% of the true pit bulls were identified by all staff members. These poor track records for correctly identifying breed is particularly important, say study authors, because in many municipalities, dogs identified as pit bulls are not offered for adoption or are subject to local breed bans preventing their adoption or ownership. Even in areas without restrictive ordinances or shelter practices, or shelter policies, pit bulls are usually stigmatized as undesirable. Labeling a dog as a pit bull can result in difficulty finding him a home or even his death. And I couldn't agree more. We want people to fall in love with the animal, not with the breed. And that's going to be kind of our mantra going forward as we incorporate this, or if we incorporate it. Like I said, I wanted to get the information from the board and also from the public. So I can't tell you how many times somebody comes in the shelter and they fall in love with the dog, and one of my staff is out there showing them the dog, and they said, "What breed is it?" And they'll say, "It's a pit or a pit mix." And they're like, oh, I don't want that. You need something else. And the staff is flabbergasted. "You fell in love with this dog, but just because we said that." And they're like, "No, I don't want it." So we have the stigma and the misrepresentation, and we want people to fall in love with the animal, not the breed. So I would like to get feedback from the board of your thoughts on this. Just to let you know, this is not a far-fetched idea that I'm coming up with. I know Espanola, I know Santa Fe, and I believe Albuquerque is also doing away with breeds. And I know several places throughout America is also getting, shelters throughout America are getting rid of breeds as well. So feedback, please. Tell me your thoughts on this.
Your thoughts? Councilor Abeyta-Stuvey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Offhand, I want to say that I think it's a good idea to be able to fall in love just with the animal, not necessarily with the breed. But looking at this, how will we address, I know that a lot of families, if they're adding to their pack, or they have other animals, cats, birds, things like that, oftentimes people look or try to avoid certain breeds that they know have a higher disposition to perhaps want to chase or something like that. So how would we sort of address those needs of clients coming into the shelter to just recognize that is a factor sometimes for families?
That's a great observation. And all that you said can be done with training. I think there might be an issue with animals coming in and saying, it's continually tries to corner my cat, or it's attacking my birds. And those are things that we would have to be ready for and have resources in place and be able to say, here's how you can get away from that behavior, because all those things are behavior. I know that some things are hardwired into animals to do from centuries and centuries of breeding. And if they're hardwired to learn that, they're also hardwired to learn commands and behavior as well. So I think those can be mitigated, but that's a very good point you bring up.
Thank you. And then moving forward, when we work with the rescues, you had mentioned before with working with Colorado where they do have breed restrictions, do we still need to disclose, I would assume, a breed if we were to try to rescue it out to those areas?
I believe what we do, I believe what we do is correct in the way that all we do is we send information to them and they choose the animal. So we're going to place the burden on them. They look on our website of what animals that they want, and we send them to them. And that's currently what we're doing. Breed is often, like I said, it's large, medium, or small. Breed is really not a worry for them right now, especially when I'm thinking of Denver or I think of Colorado. We have Colorado Puppy Rescue that we send puppies to. And again, it's on them that they want these animals in.
And so the identifier then that you guys would use would just be kind of small, medium, and large breeds?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And thank you, Councillor. Yes, Commissioner Ellens?
Is there any legal liability if you don't reveal to a prospective adopter that the dog has pit bull lines of blood?
The only way we could know that for sure is with the DNA test. Like I said, I know a lot of labs that have a big blocky head, and when they come into a center, they would be called a pit mix. And if we say, there's the flip side, there might be liability with us labeling a dog a pit mix, and it's not. And if DNA is done and shows that it's not, are we going to be liable for that? So if we open up the liability page, it's going to be long and lengthy. But I don't know of any studies or case rulings that come out and say that, yes, there is liability there.
But what if you fail to disclose?
If we have the information, absolutely. We need, like, AKC dog turned over. It's for sure a Staffordshire. Its parents were Staffordshire pit bull dogs. Then yes, we would label that animal as knowing it's this breed.
Yeah, but what if you call it a large breed? And something happens after the dog is taken home, attacks, and the owner does a DNA and comes back and said, you should have disclosed this dog's line.
But I couldn't disclose if I don't know what it is.
Jeannie, you're a lawyer. What do you think?
Forgot that. Okay. It just depends on the circumstances, a case by case. If there was knowledge that was not disclosed, then there could be a liability issue. But if there's no obligation on the part of a shelter or a rescue agency to do a DNA test to affirm something, that's kind of in the gray area there. And I think it just depends on what you're looking at, if the dog has a history of biting, or if the dog has some issues at the shelter or the rescue that they're at, and then it gets adopted out anyway. There has to be the disclosure of that behavior, not necessarily breed related. So I think you can look at liability in a number of different levels and a number of different circumstances. So it's hard to answer.
And we currently do that. If an animal has a history, we do disclose that to the adopter. And that could be a history of running. It could be a history of biting. It could, if it has a history that we do disclose it.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Dallahan.
Board members, I will remind you, and Clint and the animal control officers in the field and in the audience today are fully aware of the potential dangerous dog and the dangerous dog statutes. So those are very clear. Those result in quarantine issues, either on the property or at the shelter, which impact shelter operations. So a dog bite, a dog biting another dog, a dog biting livestock, a dog biting a human, there is a process under state statute that goes down a legal mechanism to control that. Many times, Mary Lou and Gino can step in here. There have been times that there's been court-ordered euthanasia because the dog was determined to be dangerous or potentially dangerous and so forth. There is also surrender. So that is covered by the statute, and it is a legal process. It is a judicial process. So those dogs aren't going out the door, so to speak. They're hopefully going home, staying at somebody's home, or they're being euthanized as appropriate. It is a complex process. And never perfect. So you need to keep that in mind. Gino and Mary Lou will probably also tell you they have known runners. They my grandfather always said once you had a dog that knew how to jump a fence, he always enjoyed jumping a fence. And it's not limited to dogs. So there are attributes of certain animals, but I will also say there are no bad dogs. There are only bad owners. And so it is incumbent on us to remind people that there are pet ownership responsibilities, including proper care and training of the animal. We can only do so much. So I like the idea, Clint. If I look at a dog and I assume it's a pit bull, or if I assume it's a Chihuahua, that's my assumption. And they need to fall in love with the animal, and they need to do a little research on their own if they're making that assumption. But I actually think that's a policy decision that does need to be coming to this board, because then that ensures that we've given thought to it, and the staff are saying, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not going to pay for a DNA test. I'm not going to make those assumptions. I can tell you this is a small breed under 25 pounds. It's a medium breed under 50 pounds. It's a large breed over 50. It's a giant breed because it's an over 100 pounds, So people need to make their own assumptions. And I think it's incumbent on us to bring that back as a policy to this board and saying that we've decided this as a board. This is what we want our shelter to do. We're not making any assumptions. You can make your own.
Thank you, Mr. Dallahan. Commissioner Sanchez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Thacker, I just had a question in terms of, or how much, do we have any idea outside of our service center website, any third-party websites that the data goes to, do we have any data to know or understand how many adoptions are associated with like a third-party website where the data is taken into and then utilized in using their search engine?
So let me understand what you're saying. You're asking me are there other places on the internet or anywhere that takes our data breed, we'll say, and utilizes that as an adoption, as a means of adoption? Is that what you're asking?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay, so yes, there are multiple places that do that. We would simply not provide the information, but change it to large, medium, or small, and that's how they would pull the information.
And the reason I ask is I think that given this day and age, and I think it was similar to what Councilor Beto-Stuve was mentioning, in that when people are doing searches online before they come to the service center, they will do a search when they think they want a certain type of breed or certain breeds. And so if they don't see it, it doesn't come up in their search. And so I just wondered if that would affect any possible outcomes, or at least the people that would come to the service center because they don't see that as a search result. On the other hand, I can understand where people can fall in love with a dog different than what they're looking for. If they were to just simply go through and look at every, something that's in the shelter, I can speak personally. Our pet didn't come from the shelter. I know we were looking around for a certain type of breed and ended up going, which would have been a large breed, and then we ended up going small breed, just because we fell in love with it. But so I can see both sides of it, where sometimes a breed or a label can drive people away from what they might be, that turnout might be the perfect match for them. So I can see that. I would be in support of going in this direction. I just was kind of curious as to preventing or trying to make sure that we didn't lose out on people that might be willing to come to the service center because they see a certain dog or cat or whatever it may be that they might want to adopt.
Thank you.
Ms. Ward, I believe you wanted to contribute to this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mary Lou Ward, Doña County. Just to give the board an insight, years ago when we implemented our court hold facility, which is our evidence facility for live evidence animals, prior to that facility, we would have animals attacking livestock or bite animals or vicious and or dangerous animals that were housed at the shelter. When those animals were housed at the shelter, we would just keep track of the numbers that were housed at the shelter for these incidents. When they started being housed at the facility that we have now, we started keeping all the statistical data for those animals, including the breeds. To our surprise, we found out it was not the pit bulls that we were thinking that were going to be these grand numbers. It was German Shepherds and Huskies that were the ones doing the dirty deed most of the time. So these breeds, I think keeping track of the breeds like this gave us more of an insight when we were going out and working these cases and looking at some of the information and the educational outreach we could provide to the public when we were out there into the community. So I just wanted to put that information out there.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Any questions for Mr. Thacker?
Madam Chair.
Did you, excuse me, did you? I think that when you want to, you have to put your light on to be recognized.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Quintero.
Well, you know, we talked a little bit about the information that's available on the internet about breeds, and I think it's not that it's wrong necessarily, but it's misleading. And so they always put out lists, and the veterinarians say these are the 10 most dangerous dog breeds. And they say, and these 10 dogs are the stupidest dogs you could have, and these dogs aren't good around children. But when you sit and read it, it just has misinformation. For example, a Great Dane is on the list for most dangerous dog, but why? Because it's size, because it could knock somebody down. But does that meet our definition of dangerous that we talk about when we talk about dangerous dogs? Has nothing to do with it. So I guess do you have any educational materials or educational information to share with someone who comes in and says, well, I'd like to adopt this dog, but they're a pit bull and they're dangerous? Is there something you can counter with that attitude, which might help the adoption rate for pit mixes anyway?
That's a great comment. And the answer is we don't do by breed, but we have information in our adoption packet that says you need to, we call it the suggestion of 3. Hold on to your animal. You know, it takes 3 days to get associated with your, get it comfortable with your home, 3 weeks to get associated with your schedule, and 3 months to become part of your family. So we don't have a breed specific thing, but that's definitely something that we could have available for education. It's a great idea.
If I may, apropos of your comment, Ms. Quintero, I think, though, that if the center was to do that, you might have a liability issue there. And the reason is because, well, first of all, you're not entirely sure unless you've done a DNA test on that animal. Number 2, have you had the animal under your control or a direction or whatever to observe certain behaviors? So, and I think to put something in a pamphlet or a packet of a given animal might be misleading and might be problematic. That's just my opinion.
It's a good side. I see it as somebody comes to me and says, I'd like to adopt this dog, but it looks like a pit bull and I'm worried about that. And we would say, well, if you're worried about that breed, here's some educational information about the breed. And I think that's what more that was being said is it's not us saying it's a pit bull, here's information on it. It's if you would like more information on your concerns that you may have, here's information on it. I see it as them searching it out, not us and us having it.
And I would agree with that because it's not that you would ever say that a dog is not a liability, because given the right situation with the right people and the right facts, any dog's going to bite, maybe, for whatever reason. So you can't ever guarantee that this is a dog that's never going to bite, but you can give informational, I mean, they're going to do their own research, hopefully. You're going to point them where to go, and then just say, don't believe everything you read on the internet about a dog, because every dog is different. And to kind of give, I guess, educational tips for bringing a dog home and integrating them into the family, which I think you're already doing.
Yes.
I just hate people to get on the internet and believe everything they say on there, because it's most of the time misleading and incorrect. So that was my point.
I think Abraham Lincoln said the same thing about the internet.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Ellens?
Clint, are you going to bring us a formal proposal to be voted on at some point?
It sounds like with it being policy, David Dahlhan was saying that it would need to be approved by
legal. It would have to be reviewed by our legal department, especially it would probably have to be consistent with or taking into account what the state statute might be, would be.
When do you think you might do that?
By next board meeting.
Okay.
So would you take it to Attorney Vega Brown first?
We have our own legal attorney.
Oh, we have our own legal attorney? Oh,
Yeah.
Who is our legal attorney?
Ben Young is his name.
Okay.
I forgot the
So,
name of the law.
because we're a board independent, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm still in the counselor mode.
Mr. Young is with Martinez and Minap.
Oh,
Thank you.
so thank you, Mr. Dahlhan. So I just, okay, well, we'll figure it out. But it's true, because I had an AKC lab, and people would say, oh, he's a pit bull, or he's got some pit bull, and he was AKC, and he was a pure lab. But he had that wide chest, and he had that big head, and it was probably a throwback gene to the Newfoundland, which is they're bred from. And Pepper was the mildest thing you could ever meet. He'd lick you to death, maybe. And he did knock over my then husband, who was 6 feet tall and 160 or 80 pounds or whatever. He just knocked him down because he came up behind him, just happy to play with him, and he didn't, knock him down. But I do like your idea very much, because it does bring to mind how Pepper was perceived, because he was black. I think if it would have been a yellow lab, he would have been at least, but he was perfect, the tail and the ears and everything. So I do like your idea very, very much. But I do have a question. If you were to send puppies that you're not sure what the breed is, but they might be pit bull puppies, and you send them to Colorado, well, do they do DNA on animals before they kill them?
Well,
to assure that it isn't a dangerous breed per their statute or whatever?
It's only Denver, only the city of Denver that has the
Denver.
ban.
Okay.
They would still be able to move those animals. And if the rescue is quite reputable, the Colorado Puppy Rescue is quite reputable. If they grow up and they have those characteristics, and if they can't move them, they're not going to euthanize them. They'll ship them out somewhere else where they can get adopted out.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
I just look forward to the public input part that we have towards the end of the meeting about this, if anybody has something to say.
Yes, well, we do have public input, but that's down the, because we're only on item 5.
Yep.
B, so we have quite a ways to go, but we do have public input, at which time people will be able to voice their opinions or comments. Thank you, Mr. Thacker. On to committee reports. Mr. Dahlhan, Finance.
Madam Chair, board members, we'll start with Amador giving the financial report, and then I'll talk about the Finance Committee meeting that we had last week.
Madam Chair, members, board members, Animal Service. My name is Amador Espinosa. I am one of the accountants for the City of Las Cruces, and I'm assigned to Animal Services. Mr. Dallahan, do you want me to discuss the audited financial statement results or the unaudited monthly financial statements? Okay. So again, I'll be presenting the Animal Services Center of the Mesilla Valley's monthly financial statements for the period ending January 31st, 2020. Looking at page 1 of your financial statements, or packet rather, that is the statement of net position, the general fund, the first column. You have a cash balance of $282,000. You have a receivable balance of $91,000. 88,000 of that is due from the Doña Ana County, which was received in February. You have total liabilities of $70,000. 61,000 of that is payroll liabilities, and 8,000 is monies owed to the vendors, and that money was paid. The vendors were actually paid in the month of February. Revenues collected in advance is at about $4,000. That is a Best Friends grant that has not been expended. As of February, however, the balance is going to be about $1,490. And then you have an unassigned balance of $299,000. Moving over to the next column, the capital projects funds, you have a restricted, or actually it should be restricted, I apologize for that, a restricted fund balance of $3,500, and that is for the cat room stern donation. Looking at page 2, or actually page 3, just the operational highlights, the change in net position specifically for the general fund, Fund 7440. You have total revenues at $1,775,000. You have total expenditures of $1,576,000. After the transfer of $78,000 to the capital funds, you have a net change in fund balance of $122,000. Taking a look at the budget to actuals, the budget parameter for the month of January is at 58.3%. Total revenues overall is at 61.5%. That's easily above the budget parameter, and that's mainly due because of the Doña Ana and the City of Las Cruces contribution. They pay 22% upfront in July, and then after that it's a monthly allocation throughout the remaining months. Total expenditures, they're below the budget parameter, and they're at about 55.7%. Your memo does identify some of the revenue line items if you'd like me to discuss that, or would you just like to stick with the summary on the presentation?
Are you open for questions?
I'm just asking if you want me to discuss anything further, more detailed of the revenues and more detailed of the expenditures, or are you good with the overall total revenues and total expenditures?
Would anybody like clarification or expansion on that? Yes, please.
Okay, so looking at the revenue classifications, one of the first things you'll look at is the vaccination revenues. They are at 61.2%. And again, keeping in mind that our budget parameter is at 58.3%. And that percentage of budget is due to a vaccination clinic that the Animal Services held in September. As I mentioned again, the on-site adoptions, they're at 66%, or 4.5%, the average, the budget average parameter. I think they had some good turnouts in the month of August, September, and January. Again, we've already discussed the Doña Ana contribution and the City of Las Cruces contribution. They pay 22% of the $1.2 million in July, and then it's allocated through the remaining months. The City of Anthony revenues, I believe that was under budgeted. That's why you have 124.3% budget parameter. Look at your expenditures. You have total temporary agencies at 11.7% above the parameter or threshold, and just the center's in the process of becoming completely staffed. Insurance expenditures, they're at 67.7%, and as I've mentioned before, your workman's comp, any other liability insurances we pay them directly, we don't accrue them, and then allocate them over a period of 12 months. And then lastly, there is a page 6 in your financial packet, and that kind of gives you a monthly trend of the up to January. And then the last page, page number 7, that is just a summary of any grants or donations, and the only one that remains is the cat room donation. Right. And now I am open for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? There are no questions. Thank you very
Madam
much,
Chair,
Mr.
thank you for having
Espinosa.
me. Have a good day.
Thank you. Next item is the executive report, committee report. Mr. Ellens.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I had a finance committee report. Amador does the actual financial statements for the month. I give a quick financial report. We had a finance committee last Thursday. Councilor Abeyta-Stuvey was with me. Commissioner Sanchez was unable to attend. On the committee, Clint and staff from both the budget and the accounting office were there. We went through the January financials. We talked about some stuff. Clint brought up the need for the budget work session, which is next Friday, the 5th. He had already coordinated that. That's a good thing. We're going to have some detailed discussions there. Later on your agenda today, we also discussed the acceptance of the audit or the comprehensive annual financial report for the JPA. So that's really all we discussed, if memory serves me correct. So Amador will present the financial report when it comes back to that item on the agenda. So that's it.
And Madam Chair, I apologize. There on the executive committee, the committee chair for that is actually the chair. So I'm sorry that was still as Commissioner Ellens. So you're on the hot seat.
You don't have Ellens to kick around it anymore.
Now you have me to kick around. So, I'm sorry, what? There's no kicking around. So the executive committee is comprised of Mr. Thacker, Mr. Ellens as the immediate past chair, and Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Sanchez was not advised of the meeting due to my misfeasance, but we did discuss various things. So Mr. Mike Fuscini I need help on this, Mr. Thacker. You're the one that mentioned that he did a management analysis and it was reviewed, and he said that we can benefit from line items.
Yes, if you
medical,
remember,
kennel, director, and could you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So our budget that we're going to be talking about on next Thursday, Mike Puccini, our new management analysis, was able to look and see that we're not really allocating money to programs or budgeting it very well. So he proposed to me to break it down into categories: a director's budget, a operations budget, which includes the front staff and all of our major operations, and then our medical staff, so all of that's sticking out, and then our kennel staff. So those 4 budgets are 4 areas in the shelter, and then it's all kind of grouped up to one big budget that we have. So we're able to better say medical needs this much money and kennels needs this much money, where in the past it was just one big budget. It was very hard to track. It was hard to say, well, we saved this much money for the medical portion, but we need something over here for kennels. So he had that great idea doing that. So that's going to be part, and that's what we discussed in the executive committee. We also discussed briefly the breed identification issue that we wanted to talk about here at the board, which we have done. And then I believe that's all.
Well, we also discussed whether the city, and I think it was Commissioner Ellens who brought this up, he wanted to know whether the city wanted to have its own department independent of the county.
And bringing us under the city umbrella, right? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Bringing the department, animal services under the umbrella of the city. And there was also okay, that was it. You're correct. And thank you very much, Mr. Thacker, for your assistance. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Commissioner Ellens, that was discussed there that I didn't know?
There have been informal discussions, as I understand it, between city and county representatives as to what happens to this board if, in fact, when the new facility is built, the city takes it over. And how will the county compensate the Animal Service Center? For instance, would it still be a gross contribution, or would it be per animal picked up and delivered? Not resolved, but I mean, this is the nature of the discussion. And what is the county's responsibility for governance regarding the Animal Service Center? These are issues that will and need to be resolved, not today, but in the future, there's going to be a discussion.
And I don't see any difference with the county's involvement whether we build a new center or not. It's still, right now, currently, the center is owned by the city. And also the land that it's on is owned by the city. The same thing is going to be when we build a new center. It's going to be owned by the city. It's still going to be, there's going to be an increase in budget because now I'm operating 2 buildings instead of just 1. So we'll have to do, twice as much the utilities and all those. But the only thing that you mentioned I could see that would be different is if the city decides to have a desire to change the way that they are billed, if they no longer want to do a 50-50 split of the costs or et cetera. But where I stand right now as executive director, this day, I don't plan on changing or have anything changed because the new center is being built. That's the way I see it. But I'm also not a city employee, so you have to talk to the city about that.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Madam Mayor
Hello.
Pro Tem.
Yes, thank you. We have had at least one joint work session with the county and the city to discuss the idea of moving the center into the city. I know there had been informal communications with the former manager, city manager, with Manager Macias. And so if that is, the will of this board, and we've talked about having subsequent joint meetings with the county, and that hasn't happened. So if the board wishes to, move in that direction, we can talk about having a joint meeting with city and county officials to sort of talk about what the city has developed. Now, the city did present an idea, because we have looked at it as a city, of what the issues are and concerns. Now we have a new board, right? And so a lot of work has been done from the city's side to look at what it would take for the center to move into the city in terms of complete sort of responsibility, with the idea of county continuing to provide the financials for that. So, David, can you, Madam Chair, if I may, can we,
of course,
update the new members here of the board in terms of what all those discussions have been like and sort of where we are at this point?
Madam Chair, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, In late 2007, there was a proposal by the previous city manager to look at bringing the Animal Service Center into essentially an operational department of the city.
And not 2007, right? 2017.
Oh, sorry. You are correct. 2017. My apologies. It was late 2017, essentially creating the Animal Service Center as a department within its command chain. So as for those of you who aren't familiar, the only employee of the city council is the city manager. He hires all employees. The controlling factors of the city council is they hire the city manager, they adopt the budget, they adopt city policy, they adopt ordinances and resolutions, implementation. They also help control through the budget the organizational structure of the city. That is clear within our charter. Then what would happen under the proposal is Animal Service Center becomes a department that would report through the chain of command to the city manager, who is the city council's only employee. Under our proposal at the time, which we were still supportive of, there would be an animal care and control advisory board similar to the city council's planning and zoning commission or parks and rec advisory board. Under that proposal, there would be lay persons and specialty persons appointed by the council to that board, and there could be county representation. That was not thought out. That was not fleshed out or any way, shape, or form. One proposal was, as part of the city, bringing it under the city operations as a department, the shelter would be merged with city animal control, would become part of that department because they do work regularly together. Currently, city animal control is part of the police department. It's codes enforcement function. So that would change. That's part of the proposal. Then there was an expanded proposal to look at taking over county animal control under that merged department. We don't feel at this point that what we called phase 2 at that time is a viable option economically for either entity. There are just differences that occur between our equipment and practices at the animal control level, which are okay because they need to be, because we are working in different settings. That was our assessment at the time in 2018. We need to come back to the city council. There are some information that we need to update from the late 2017 analysis. We now have 2 more years worth of data from the shelter on adoptions and so forth. The long-term issues are that we have to resolve a para issue, which I just found information about from para themselves. That is not that big of an issue. The Animal Service Center is their own para plan within para. Unlike some other joint powers agreements, those employees of the other joint powers agreements are in our para pool. For example, South Central Solid Waste and MRVDA, they're in the city's para pool. Animal Service Center is not like that. I think it had to do with the timing as to when it was done. These are complicated issues that we have to resolve, but we found out that that's not the most complicated issue. Our original proposal, and I just had discussions yesterday on giving information, what we had done to the county assistant county manager and Ms. Quintero yesterday about what we had done in 2017, giving them opportunity to develop time for questions that they may have from the county's perspective that we may not have thought of. So that happened yesterday. So, and I'm sharing with them information as they come up with questions. The original proposal is there would be for a set period of time, there would be a flat dollar amount coming from the county to help with the transition. But in the long term, it would be on a per animal fee basis. Right now, my rough numbers are 60% of the animals come from the city, 40% come from the county. That's just been historical. I think that's a fairly fair assessment. Clint, as executive director, and you as the board have moved forward on some much-needed improvements. One of them is the other entities in the county, the other, whether it's White Sands Missile Range or the other incorporated communities, we have unified their fee for a per animal fee basis. So we have a mechanism by which to accommodate billing for the animals. The city would not bill itself for animals. We are efficient in that regards. It would just be part of the budget. The county would ultimately could recognize some savings because instead of a flat agreed upon annual fee, it would be based on a per animal fee basis. We could do that on a monthly basis, or we could do that on an annual basis based on a historical trend. And then that's what we do with MRVDA. Our fee is based on historical calls with MRVDA. So those are nuances that we have to work out. As I understand it, we were going to have a city work session first. That was the mayor's request, and I'm working to get on that calendar because not every member of the city council is fully aware of the 2017 proposal, and there are a bunch of nuances. And then we would continue working with the county, and we would start involving ASCMV staff. There are some efficiencies gained by this, legal expenses, liability expenses, other things that are already part of the city organization that ASCMV has to pay for now. So there are some recognized savings there. We do have to work out where it would be in the revenue stream because if money comes in, it goes into the general fund if it's a general fund activity, but there are mechanisms where we can restrict that activity. So license and registration fees, adoption fees, the county's money could go into a special revenue fund and so forth. So there are a bunch of nuances that we will present to the council. ASCMV staff will be part of that before we present to council, and then we'll go to the county, at that point. It's not likely to happen between now and the end of the fiscal year. It probably, if it's going to move forward, it's probably best to happen next fiscal year end, next June 30th. There are some, you can do it at any time. I can tell you we can do it at any time once that decision is made. However, there are some financial implications from the audit and the books that makes it more efficient for us to do at a fiscal year change, but we can actually, I've seen it done both ways. I've seen it done at a fiscal year, and I've also seen it done during the fiscal year. So it is just easier at the end of a fiscal year. But if that's the desire of the two political entities that make up the Joint Powers Agreement that create the ASCMV, we can do that. That's it in a 5-minute nutshell, maybe a few minutes longer than 5 minutes. So sorry for taking so much time, but that's where we are.
Mr. Dullahan, I do have a question. So the fiscal year would end in 2021?
So the ASCMV and the city and the county are both on a July 1 to June 30th. So it would be June 30th. In my opinion, the earliest we could do it would be June 30th of 2021.
Yes, that's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Dullahan. Anything else, Mr.
I'm sorry, I have just one more,
I'm so sorry.
more question. That's okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Dullahan and to the board, one of the things that I think we should look at also is not only a flat fee, but also a fee for housing for the building of a second building, right? I think we need to consider that as well as we continue the dialogue because, we passed a GEO bond from the city's perspective to build a new facility to include the adoption side that will now, where you currently are at, and there is nothing in there that the county has put in any funding towards that. So I'd like for us to have a conversation about that specific fee as well. Right. So thank you.
So Counselor, that is a very good point, and that is something that to be aware of. And I will remind this, and I say this often, city residents are county residents. And so that's always something I keep in mind. The GO bond is pledged by property tax increases for Las Cruces residents. That will be paid for over the years through that property tax assessment. We have not looked at that fee as a per fee basis. We also haven't discussed with Clint and his staff as would that per animal fee basis change, and would there be a factor such as that? Most of the fees to house the animals are paid by the adopter or the person whose stray animal was at the shelter for a number of days, correct? So those are nuances that we have to do that may not be a direct fee, but it may be built into our fee structure with the county, and we do need to have that discussion. So thank you. That is a very good point.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Mr. Thacker and Madam Chair.
And thank you. That was an excellent question. Is that the conclusion, or is there anything else?
For the executive committee, yes. I'm ready for the next one.
Oh, that's right. You are ready. Your facilities. Thank you, Mr. Thacker.
So the facilities committee did not meet. The time we were supposed to meet, I was it was in a training outside of the state, so we did not have the meeting. However, I do want to update you on the new center plans. There's a 60% completion of blueprints will be turned in March, so we're excited that that continues to move forward. I appreciate the input we're getting from my coworkers, from our staff. I send out, every time we get an update, I send information out. The most recent was in the lobby, they want to have an area for children to be able to entertain themselves. So we have already made a commitment that there's going to be either chalk paint or chalk boards mounted to the walls on a lower level with chalk that kids can have fun, draw pictures while their parents or caretakers are taking care of business. So it was great to get that feedback from our staff on that. So those continues, it's a daily communication with the architect and with their special advisor, Larry Connolly, that I appreciate everything that's going on there on their part to complete that. Our other thing going on right now at the center is our HVAC project. That is underway. It did start in mid-February. We've had 2 project meetings so far. Right now, it has a July 13th completion date to have everything completed. And this is doing a brand new roof on the entire center and also converting from swamp coolers to actual HVAC, so heating and air. We are excited for that addition. However, it is taking some time and there are some growing pains. For instance, on March 5th, we are going technology dark. We're going to be losing our internet connection just for a day. So this is something that Bernice is helping us remember what a pencil and a pen is and paper. And we're going to be losing phones. So we have to look at forwarding our phones to cell phones or utilizing our older analogs, see if that line's still live. Everything's all in place to take care of these things, but it's a challenge that we are willing to work with because we see the great results from it. And we're used to it because we were very displaced when the remodeling portion was happening. So we're excited for that to go on. The completion date was delayed a little bit because of our bad weather that we had, high winds, snow, rain. For some reason, they don't want to work on a roof when it's snowing or when there's high winds. So we understand that. The city is in charge of that project, and they're doing a fabulous job having individual there every single day, keeping track of how that's going forward. So currently right now they're doing the roof removal portion of that, and we're just excited to see how it goes on. That's what I present for the Facilities Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Thacker. Any questions from the board? Mayor Pro Tem?
Madam Chair, thank you, Mr. Thacker. In terms of the facility and the new build, what kind of conversations are being had around sustainability, putting solar and those kinds of things already off the bat? I'm finding that through our GEO bond projects, there's not a lot of communication because of the cost, and I think either we pay now or pay later. So I think in the long run, if we are already speaking to any of our new builds, we should have that conversation in terms of solar.
That conversation has already taken place. We are very excited about it. I don't know if it was a grant or money was awarded to the project, but it's to start solar. So we will have the PVC panels on. It will not be 100% coverage. But it is be able to expand on that. Do you have anything you want to add on that, David?
That's awesome.
Mr. Thacker, that was part of the architectural design presentation as well, wasn't it?
It was. We did not have the information at that time that we awarded the money, but that was the lead plan, was to have that ready to go for solar.
Right.
So we're glad that this is an addition that we got money for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, board members, on the sustainability going to the solar, the city has set aside sustainability funds for that very purpose. For the county members, you may not know, we have a long-term goal to reduce our electric utility usage to more renewable resources, whether that's renewable energy through solar or geothermal and so forth. Our first goal is in 2022. That's 0.25% based on 2007 numbers. Don't hold me to that year. And then 2030, and then to be 100%. So we have two avenues available to us using that sustainability fund to put solar on there, or we've also just entered into a contract for a purchase power agreement. Based on our review of the building's future size and so forth, we're going to use the sustainability funds. The purchase power agreement is a little more expensive for us, and it's more beneficial to use it in other areas, our water wells, some of our utility operations. It has opportunity to expand elsewhere in the future. We got really lucky because it was the key time for us to make those design considerations to accommodate solar. So it's worked out really well. We're just using other funds to put them in as part of the project. And they will go in last. So.
Oh, good. Okay, Madam Chair. Mr. Dollahan, I love that idea, but it's not to capacity, right? It's not 100%. And I'd like to hear what that would look like year to year, not forgetting, because I can imagine the energy that's going to be expended there. And so I'd like us to, on the board, to familiarize ourselves, make sure that at our budget time that we're moving towards that, because I'm assuming that it will be coming out of the ASCMV's budget, and maybe any grant opportunities that we may look at to help to get to 100%.
Madam Chair, Councilor Gondara, you're correct. We will work on those estimates based on the first phase. We have to look at other phases and other opportunities, grants, future years we're funding to expand the system that can be accommodated within the new building. We also need to look at the existing building. We're doing work now. That building's not going to go away. So those are part of every building that we're looking at the city, and that includes the existing and the future building at ASCMV. So we will work on those numbers with you. And you are correct. ASCMV's electric bill and water bill does come out of their operating budget, so they have to pay that. We are looking at some innovative things within the new building that will help with some cost savings elsewhere, landfill fees and so forth. So it's an exciting project, so we will get there.
Thank you, Mr. Dollahan. Thank you, Mr. Thacker. Thank you, Madam
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Dollahan. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Mr. Thacker. Next is 0 in 7 update. And Ms. Jean Gilbert will present.
Good morning, ASCMV Board of Directors. I'm Jean Gilbert, and I'm the Secretary for the Coalition for Pets and People. This is a listing of the 6 community organizations that are going to be featured in this month's presentation. The other groups here in the area will be highlighted in next month's report. Excuse me. Okay, and here are the coalition activities for January and February, and they include meetings with the task force and a meeting with the Doña Ana County Humane Society Director, April Anaya, talking about ways that we can network and support each other, having the same goal to help the animal shelter. And Coalition Chair Rick Hahn met with Safe Havens Volunteer Coordinator Tricia Quillen and talked about the calls that they receive for animals in need. The Coalition leadership set goals for 2020, which you see listed here. The Coalition has adopted a new logo because the 0 in 7 goal has, the time has lapsed on that, so our byline right now, as we feel, summarizes really what all of the organizations need is we all need human resources, so our buzzword is volunteer. And this is a slide on the Dog Park Coalition, and they held a Board of Directors meeting of February the 12th to plan their annual meeting and some of their year's events. In addition to the board meeting, the Dog Park Coalition holds intermittent socials, birthday celebrations for their dogs, and they hold monthly washdowns of the park on the first Saturday of the month. Dog Park members are currently exploring strategies to get security lighting at the park. And here you see pictured the president, pictured on the right is Kevin Armstrong. And this slide is on the Las Cruces Pet Network, which helps animals like this orphan dog who came to the network's attention through a phone call seeking help. The network tries to find solutions and resources so that we can bypass the animal shelter, and by posting notices on social media, and we have a direct distribution email list that we use. And we make calls to advocates and to rescue organizations to help animals. The New Mexico Forever Homes Animal Rescue is based in Alamogordo, and they've been rescuing animals in need since 2005, and they received their 501(c)(3) status in 2015. They work diligently to assist animals in this region, which are mostly dogs, out of the shelters where animals are at risk of euthanasia, and they transport them to cities and states where the animals are received by no-kill rescues. And interesting to know that many of these animals involved in this transfer, and I know Clint has referenced it too, but many of them find adoptive families within less than two weeks. Here you see Denise Beyer, who's affiliated, a team member of Engaged Paws, and she's rescuing, doing a transport of this Australian Penelope from the ASCMV to a rescue arranged by Forever Homes Animal Rescue. Their rescue numbers are 728 dogs and 83 cats, totaling 800 animals, or 811 animals that Forever Homes Animal Rescue helped during the year 2019. And of those numbers, 52 of the dogs, and I know it was a slide that I had last year, came from the rough hoarding case in Deming. Here are a couple of dogs that were relinquished to the Animal Services Center, and Lost to Found Pets and New Mexico Forever Homes Animal Rescue advocated for these two dogs, Kane and Dexter. They came in very bad condition to the shelter, and both dogs now are doing quite well and have made significant gains. The black dog there is with Foster Snyder, and a lot of us have been following her on Facebook to see what the progress has been for these dogs. Safe Haven Animal Sanctuary is a limited admission shelter, a no-kill sanctuary located on the East Mesa, and they house approximately 90 animals. Maisie, pictured here, is one of their recent adoptions, and in addition to their adoption promotions at PetSmart and other locations, Safe Haven also promotes their animals on the radio, like this little Henry, and I actually saw it live streamed with the little dog being serenaded by the musicians that sang Nothing But a Hound Dog. Safe Haven receives 25 to 60 phone calls a day for animals in need, with 50 to 60% of those calls for surrender, relinquishment fall in that category. Rick met recently with Tricia Quillen and their volunteer coordinator and talked about the type of calls they get. 25% of those calls in the relinquishment or surrender category come from caretakers of elderly people who are either in hospice or they've died and they're looking for a place for the animals. Safe Haven held a 3-day mobile spay neuter clinic in January, and that resulted in 158 spay and neuters, which I think is amazing. Here are some groups that have donated to Safe Haven. The Newman Center and the NMSU students both held either a fundraiser or a donation event for the sanctuary. SNAP, Spay Neuter Action Program, has clinics scheduled through June. And you see a listing here that goes through April. And it's their schedule with the Paws and Hooves mobile clinic that comes to their site there. SNAP issued 246 spay neuter vouchers for the month of January, with 149 of those for dogs and 97 for cats. In addition to the clinics and issuing vouchers, SNAP participates in vaccination clinics, and they recently worked with County ACES in Barreno and this is an opportunity for them to promote spay and neuter. And SNAP says they've seen an increase in demand because of the grant from the county. Uncaged Paws. Zora is a microchip miracle, this dog pictured here. She was a discarded mama dog found in the desert and was rescued and placed in Uncaged Paws last litter program, and that was about 1.5 years ago. Because of all the trauma that Zora suffered, she was slow to trust people, and she ended up escaping from her foster home in November 2018. But the new beginning and the good news is a Good Samaritan rescued her, was able to rescue her. She was on the run, but they were able to rescue her because she was being attacked by dogs, by a group of dogs. And this is 14 months after she escaped that she was rescued. And she suffered severe injuries, and her back leg had to be amputated. And here you see Zora pictured with Jennifer Kleintz, who is a member of the Uncaged Paws Last Litter team. But the reason I'm showing this slide is because it's an illustration of the success of Uncaged Paws programs, their foster and adoption program, their Last Litter, and their Check the Chip, which they're going to be resuming in March. Project Save a Kitten is going to hold their annual kitty glitter, which is an enormous and wonderful jewelry sale, and that will be Friday and Saturday, March 27th and 28th. Proceeds go to help cats in the community and to help local cat organizations. Doñana County Humane Society will host their first Yappy Hour of the season on March the 18th at Lacombe's Winery, and this is a very fun people and pet social which runs through October. They hold monthly Yappy Hours. And I'm going to end the slide with this: adopt, rescue, foster, volunteer, and donate. We need to dramatically increase our participation and resources in these categories. And I know Clint referenced, how very close we are now to no kill. And so by people engaging and volunteering and do these kinds of things, not only can we increase the resources, but when we do see consistency in reaching no kill, hopefully because of participation and support from the community, we will be able to sustain it. So please help Las Cruces become a no kill community. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes, there are. Mayor Pro Tem Gandara.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. I appreciate you coming every month and giving out all the information. And I'm wondering from the 0 to 7 if there were some commonalities in the reporting. For example, like each of the entities that participate in the 0 and 7, if they could be collecting information like number of animals, where they come from. Like you mentioned in one of the slides, I think I took notes from the Safe Haven that there were 90 animals, right? And then you specifically...
They house 90.
90
yeah, their
animals.
Facility houses 90, yeah.
So 90 animals. So I'm wondering if the reporting can be similar to what we're asking the city and county, plus the center, so that we have an idea, because what struck me was... and then you kind of broke it down a little further with the Safe Haven numbers. 25% are relinquished, right, because of elder. Either they've been in hospice or they're no longer living and they've had to give up the animals. So to me, it's important to sort of look to see some commonalities and ways by which we can work together, right? In terms of like how many are foster adopt? Are they coming specifically from other communities like Alamogordo and Grant? Because I know sometimes they do that, right? But also things like the CHIP program, numbers there. I'm just trying to find a way that as we're collecting information, that we're seeing how we're affecting each other's programs, right? And how what other specific categories that maybe we may need to be emphasizing. So I'm thinking around the strategic planning session that I had recommended. So it's important to have these numbers in my mind. So
well, I think, as often as I can, every month I include for the board members' packets the reports from the different groups. And
Yeah.
so the data that I'm giving you is what I'm able to get from them.
Sure.
And so that's why I may not be able to cover all the bases there, but I'll continue. Rick and I are the leadership of the coalition, and one of the goals has been that we're going to meet with the representatives. And there are some of them that do report on a regular basis, and I know APA is one who has been very consistent every month reporting all their stats. But this time they transferred their system over to another one. So next month they'll make up for the loss in their report this month. But I guess the short of it is that there is going to be some inconsistency, but we'll continue to work on it as much as we can in getting as much data as we can. An organization like New Mexico Forever Homes, because they're regional, I personally would be interested in knowing what the numbers are that they're helping from Las Cruces, and maybe just contacting them individually. I can
Right, because
find
at the
out.
end of the day, the advocates, right, and the number of these groups are trying to help either take from the center, so they're not there for so long, and or right towards 0 and 7, right?
Yeah,
They're
and of
trying.
course, all of the organizations, they have different mission statements.
Sure.
Of course, by and large, we all are trying to help our shelter become no-kill. But so it's the data is going to vary based on their mission.
And I understand depending on what they're doing, but if we could get information and working together, right, to ensure that we have our priorities set forth to move, to a no-kill, because I think that's what all of us want, right? And so I was hoping that as your coalition meets and gets stronger, that you too can, help affect some of these numbers, and you are. Yeah, so those are some of my questions, like your CHIP program, the numbers, how many vouchers are being used, right? How many are out there? How many are being used? And then what are the issues when we can't get people back to use their voucher? Those are just some of my comments and things that I'd like to know.
And that would certainly be something for SNAP, is to find out what the vouchers are that are actually redeemed, because the numbers we're getting are the vouchers that have been issued. So.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much.
There's one more question for you, I believe.
Okay.
Councillor Abetes-Stuvey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for all the hard work that all these organizations do in the community. I am one of those that looks online at the different stories and sees, those successes and sometimes those heartbreaking stories. But I know you all work very, very hard, so thank you so much for that service. One of my questions was just very related to Board Member Gondara's, which is if we had some of that data, and maybe Mr. Thacker might know some of this as well, on how many animals are getting taken from these local organizations, because I know that we do a lot, like with Halo, which is in Arizona, you said, but how many were able to give to local organizations, and then using those numbers against how many they're picking up from just community members as well.
Well, I know Clint does the daily Facebook posting with a breakdown of all of the, really the activities that are happening there at the center related to animals. And I would imagine that those are listed there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have it broke down by what rescue takes what. I don't have the other information you're asking about. That would have to come from the rescues. How many comes in straight to them, or how many they're helping out. But if you'd like, I can get that number for you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
And then later on, at least we can compare those data,
Okay.
So, but thank you so much for all the work.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Gilbert. Thank you. Next on the agenda is our action items.
Madam Chair, on the first item, Resolution 20-006, I'll present. The second item, Amador Espinosa will present, and then Clint's going to do the last one. Before you is a budget adjustment to your capital account. It is in this fiscal year, but it's due to, we have a reduction in revenue from the grant revenue line item for $21,000. That was revenue we had received last year. Timing of the budget, we hadn't adjusted it this year. Now that the audit is through, we need to make this adjustment because it occurred in this fiscal year. And then there's a net positive amount for the Animal Service Center on $16,654 on the capital line item that has also been spent. That was on the previous building improvements. So that's in your Exhibit A on that resolution. So that's a reduction of $21,000 on the revenue side and an authorized expenditure of $16,654 on the budget line item, but that's a net positive.
Thank you, Mr. Dollahan. Any questions of Mr. Dollahan? May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second. Thank you. It has been, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Board Member Gonzalez?
Yes.
Board Member Abeta-Stuve?
Yes.
Board Member Ellens? Mr. Ellens, can I have that on the mic?
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Gandara?
Yes.
Board Member Sanchez?
Yes.
Chairperson Flores?
Yes. The next resolution will be presented by Mr. Amador Espinosa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, my name is Amador Espinosa. I'm one of the accountants for the City of Las Cruces, and I'm assigned to the Animal Service Center. Members of the board, this is a summary of the 2019 audit results. Just a quick view, the city's accounting program, which is us, we prepare the financial statements. However, it is the center's the center is responsible for the financial statement content. The independent auditor's report, if you look at your audited financial statement, and that is on page 62. Are we all there, Madam Chair? So the auditor's opinion of the financial statements is a unmodified opinion, and an unmodified opinion means that it is the best opinion available. And as you know, and as you can read there on page 62, it states that there were no material weakness identified and there were no significant deficiencies identified in the overall audit of the financial statements. I will touch a little bit regarding the repeat offense here in a few minutes, if you just bear with me. Again, the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with accounting principles, with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. A quick overview of total expenses, or rather total expenditures and revenues. This is a comparative between FY16 all the way up through FY19. Revenues are in the orange and total expenditures are in the green. For FY16, you'll see revenues are at 2.3 million and expenditures are at 1.9. Moving on to FY17, revenues are at 2.3 million and expenditures are at 2.1. FY18, you have revenues at 2.5. I'm sorry, you have expenditures that exceed revenues at 2.18. And that was probably the same for 2017, excuse me. And then for FY19, you have expenditures that are at 4.1 million and revenues at 2.9 million. Due to that expenditure increase, a lot of it during FY19, we did have the Capital Project Fund. There was about 1.3 million, I believe, that was for the building improvements. It was an expense to the center. And then since the building is owned by the city, that capitalization goes to the city. To discuss the repeat findings, we had a finding. It's regarding internal controls over cash receipts. It is repeated and modified. Modified just basically means it is emphasis of matter, meaning it's put there for a reason. The auditors want you to know. There was a finding in the previous audit year. What they did is they tested 40 deposits, and 6 of those 40 deposits were not deposited within 24 hours. And then one of those 40 deposits did not have signature on the cash slip. Any questions?
Councilor Abeyta-Stube?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For those deposits, were we able to find out if those were deposits that happened on the weekend or during the weekday?
That's a good question. We did provide that resource for you. There was one that was deposited on July 5th, 2018, which was on a Thursday. There was one that was deposited on August 18, 2018. It was on a Saturday, but it wasn't deposited on Monday. It was deposited even a day after the Monday. We had another deposit on August 21st, 2018, which was on a Tuesday, and then another deposit on August 31st, 2018, which was on a Friday.
You're welcome. Mayor Pro Tem Gandara?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Espinosa, for your presentation. In this particular audit, would the issues that we discussed last time around the shortfall of personnel funding, would that have been detected by this audit firm?
Actually, it wouldn't. Madam Chair, Councilor Gandara, if you look at page 16 of your audited financial statements, actually, is it page 16? Hold on, give me a minute to find it. It's regarding
Mr. Espinosa,
budgets.
tell me the page number again.
I'm looking for it. Just,
okay.
If you could bear with
Sorry.
me, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's on page 26, rather.
Okay.
And so looking at note 1, summary of significant accounting policies, and it talks about budgets. If you read through it, and right towards the end of the paragraph, as you said, if a fund is not overspent, it is in compliance with state law. The budget may be amended by the Center Board. However, approval of the State of New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration must be obtained for budget increases. So to answer your question, that type of personnel issue where they didn't budget for a shortfall of personnel is not something that a financial audit would find. It is more of internal. It's something between the center, between the budget department, and I believe also the HR department, as they're forecasting for the next fiscal year. Because what they're looking for, when the auditors are looking for, is what you budgeted for. Did you overspend in actuals? Not necessarily did you budget a shortfall.
Okay, so we weren't at that point, but we would have been, right, if we were at a certain point and overspent, right?
That's correct. If our actuals actual payroll expenses or expenditures were spent and our actuals exceeded the amount budgeted, then it would have been considered a finding. Mm-hmm. And then depending on the amount of the finding, it could have been a material weakness or a significant deficiency.
Okay, so I also understand when these auditors come, you would say, you meaning the city or the Animal Services Center would say, why are we, 60-something% of our budget? I knew there was an issue according to Mr. Thacker. And so you would say, there's a red flag here. I want you to check into this, right? We don't have enough funding, specifically for the number of employees that we have, right? So then they would go in and spot check, correct?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question. Is if you're asking the question that there was a shortfall, that when the center and the budget department did not budget for those, say, for example, 6 or 7 employees, That would not be immediately obvious. Now, if you told the auditors that that would be an issue, that wouldn't particularly be a finding. It's not a financial audit finding as of yet. They're looking at budget to actuals, and they're looking at whether your actuals exceed your budgeted amounts. So it would be more of a internal issue of why they didn't budget, or why they accidentally forgot to budget for 6 positions that weren't filled at the time.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Espinosa.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
madam.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Donahue.
Madam Chair, board members, Councilor Gondar, please remember that this audit was for fiscal year 19 that ended last June 30th. The issue that we're having now is in this year's budget process. And I believe it is a collective issue that needs to be resolved between the city's human resources acting on behalf of the ASCMV as the fiscal agent, our budget office, and animal service staff. It is a collective effort. We have only so much accurate data in human resources. It's dependent on the staff at the Animal Service Center to verify that and make sure we have the right positions. And then that's a joint effort between those two departments to make sure budget has the right information. We're going through that on the city's budget now. That should be part of our discussion next week as well as part of our work session, because we at the city level, when we do budgeting, we verify every person in every position if they're filled, or is it a true and legitimate vacant position based on when we were developing the budget. So it is a joint effort, but it does need to be done. And I think what we need to offer at the city is have a sit down between Human Resources, ASCMV, and the budget office and go through that discussion. I don't know that we need a full audit. We need to figure out who's in what positions, where, now, who was previously in positions that became vacant, and verify those with Bernice and others and make sure we have the right inventory of staff. I think we don't need to be spending money, in my opinion, on an auditor until such time as we've at least had that sit-down discussion and go through that as a staff. That'd be my recommendation.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Espinosa? Thank you, Mr. Espinosa, but I do have a comment for Mr. Dollahan. This, to me, is very unnerving as a city councilor and as a member of this board, but particularly as a member of the city council. For it's to me, it should just be so automatic that the budget department knows that we don't have those employees or we need these employees, and it seems that human resources would have that information, and it would be something that would just be a matter of fact. And so it's disconcerting. It's something that we can discuss later. Perhaps it's a city issue, but because it is impacting animal services, what concerns me is where else might this be happening? And that's very disconcerting for me, Mr. Dollahan. And I think it's something that we have to address as a city council in a work session or whatever it is to, whatever it takes, send out a notice, an OMA or whatever. But it's something that we really have to discuss. It's very disconcerting. It's actually kind of scary. And I'm happy that Mayor Pro Tem Gandara jumped in at our last meeting and said, I want an audit. And I think that what Mr. Espinosa has stated is that an audit wouldn't have found, and it didn't. And that's why it doesn't show up in the audit report. So perhaps you're right that an audit isn't going to help. But yes, what would you like to say?
Madam Chair, members of the board, another thing to consider is conducting another audit. I mean, the numbers on the financial statements aren't going to change. Those are legitimate, actual expenditures for the fiscal year. So those numbers aren't going to change. What we're talking about is, and what Madam Gandara is probably asking is, why was it overlooked? Why was there a shortfall in determining these are the number of positions that's required for the animal service to function in full capacity, and yet we didn't budget for the full capacity. And that is, David Dollahan has indicated, you know, it's a discussion that the director of the Animal Service Center, HR, and budget need to have.
I will add one more thing to it.
Thank you, Mr. Espinosa.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Dollahan?
You are correct. It should be concerning, and we need to resolve the issue. No doubt. I will tell you, because this was last fiscal year's audit, and we have to be careful because we're getting off the topic. Technically, we should be talking about this audit. But last year's budget was Clint's first full budget, was it not? So it is a learning curve for him as well and for everyone involved. And so this is an unfortunate accident that should not have happened, and it can be resolved. I know it can. Yes, it should be concerning, and I'm working really hard with Clint that we can solve this problem in next year's budget as well. And that will be a very healthy discussion next week.
Thank you, Mr. Dollahan, and I hope you're having those hearty discussions in other departments as well. Thank you. Mr.
One last.
Yes, Councilor, Mayor Pro Tem
Madam
Gandara.
Chair, thank you. The other part that is concerning, and I'll say this publicly, I said it in another board meeting that we have a joint powers of agreement, is we need to be invited to these entrance and exit exams. It's one of my first times that I was not invited to that. I understand why that happened, and we've brought up things like Open Meetings Act, and the invitations went to certain people. I know that I've said this ad nauseum at the City Council and at the South Central Solid Waste Authority Board, but it's important that, and I think if I remember correctly, the county was invited, is what I was told through the South Central Solid Waste Authority, but we're at joint powers, and this is your first time sitting on this board. And so I understand all the nuances and a new team and, you know, that kind of thing, but someone has to raise that, right? You don't see people, someone needs to say, was our board chair, was our members invited? We police ourselves pretty well in terms of having more than 3 people. We put quorum notices out. And I just want to be clear that I'd like to have the opportunity to be invited to this stuff. Probably now I'm the most seasoned person on this group until I'm not. So it's important to have the history there as well, I think. And I also want to encourage staff on the city side to really work. I know this is in addition to the job duties that you already have, but I'd like to encourage the collaboration and the coordination from with these other joint powers of agreement, entities, because I think it's important. And Clint and I have had this conversation in December about what my expectation is in terms of him in terms of reaching out and ensuring that we get these things taken care of. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gandara. Yes.
Josie Medina.
From
We are from the city of Las Cruces. To respond on the exit and...
Excuse me, which department?
Finance Department.
Thank you.
To address the exit and entrance conferences, we are changing our meetings for next year to have them separate. This was the first year we tried it as one, but next year we are having separate meetings. And in this meeting right here, we did have Mr. Ekman and Ms. Flores attend this exec conference.
It can't be Ms. Flores. It could be Mr. Ekman.
It was Jack Ekman.
Oh, on the
and
joint one.
Ivana
Sorry.
Flores. Yes.
I'm sorry. You were correct. Sorry.
Madam Chair. So, sorry, Madam Chair. Is that right?
Excuse me. Yes, Councilor Leite-Stube.
Thank you. So looking at the back of this exit conference, and it lists the people that were in attendance, and it lists Councilor Flores here. Is that not correct then?
Ms. She was there.
You were there?
Yes, I was there.
You just need to realize that she was there as city councilor. She wasn't on the ASCMV board at that time. That's why. And it was a joint one between the city council and all of our JPAs who we are the fiscal agent for. And that's what has presented us with difficulties, is because we can't result in the closed meeting on the exit conference. We can't result in a quorum of the board. Or the city council. So that's why we're going back to separate meetings. So we can meet in a closed meeting on the exit conference and on the exit conference as this board, but not as a city council. That's why.
Thank you.
Excuse me, any other questions? Any other comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Espinoza, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I need a motion.
Madam Chair.
Oh, no, that has been, was that the motion?
No, I don't think there's a motion.
Yes, I need a motion on resolution number 2020-07, a resolution authorizing the governing board for the Animal Services Center of the Mesilla Valley to approve the annual financial report for the year ending June 30, 2019.
Madam
Is
Chair.
there a motion?
I move approval.
Second?
Can you say that again on the microphone, please?
Second.
Thank you. Board Member Gonzalez.
Yes.
Board Member Leite-Stube.
No.
Board Member Ellens.
Yes.
Board Member Gandara.
No.
Board Member Sanchez.
Yes.
Chairperson Flores.
No. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2020-8, accept $5,000 from Best Friends Animal Society for the Executive Leadership Training Program. And
So
Mr.
moved.
Thacker is, I need a motion.
Sorry. So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Discussion, or Mr. Thacker?
I believe everybody knows what this is for, the scholarship for me to attend the executive leadership training. So scholarship money.
Is there any discussion on this? Roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry. There is, I'm sorry, Commissioner Sanchez.
No, I didn't have any discussion. I apologize.
Oh, but you have your light on.
I do. I apologize for that.
Oh, well, excusez-moi. Roll call, please.
Board Member Gonzalez.
Yes.
Board Member Leite-Stube.
Yes.
Board Member Ellens.
Yes.
Thank you. Board Member Gandara.
Yes.
Board Member Sanchez.
Yes.
Chairperson Flores.
Yes. Next item is public input. Is Laura Duncan here? Ms. Duncan, you asked to speak. How many people will be speaking on, participate in public input? One? and Ms. Duncan. Okay, step forward, Ms. Duncan. You have 5 minutes.
That better? Please excuse my nerves. It's the first time I've ever done this, and a little emotional. So I'm one of the 10% unsuccessful stories regarding an animal that was brought into the services center. And I felt it was worth your time knowing what happened.
Please keep your body, mouth close to the
okay.
To the microphone. Thank you. Okay. Yes.
So just a quick backtrack. In September of 2018, a mother cat brought her 3 kittens to my barn. And since that point in time, we have raised them, loved them, adored them. They've become part of the family. They're basically semi-feral at this point. I can touch them, pet them, play with them. Fast forward to November of 19. About mid-November, one of my beloved cats went missing. Because we live right at the edge of the orchards, right off of Highway 478 South Main, right out of Mesilla Park, I assumed that cat had probably been lost to a predator because there are coyotes and owls in the area, and I mourned his loss, as well as the rest of his little family. Fast forward again to January 17th, I happened to be talking to the former handyman of my neighbor. And I was mentioned because he still caretakes the property that is right next door to me, just right over the wall. I mentioned to him that I have feral cats just because I didn't want anything else to be happening. I know that some cats aren't welcomed, and they do range a little bit, not much. But I wanted him to know that I'd had feral cats and they were important to me. Before I even gotten the words out of my mouth, he said, "By any chance, are you missing a gray tabby, a dark gray tabby?" I said, "Yes." And he says, "Well, here's what happened. On November 13th, I went onto the property. I found the dark gray tabby entangled in some horse corralling by his hind foot. He said I released him. The hind foot was injured. I put him in a box, a plastic container, took him up to Animal Services Center and turned him in. He said I was told that he would be medically treated and that they would quote unquote try to find him a home." That was on January 17th, which was a Friday. I went home immediately, called Services Center, try and find out what had happened to my cat. The only information I got was he was euthanized. That was it. I found out I could get records information, so the following Tuesday, not Monday because it was closed for Martin Luther King Day, the following Tuesday I went down, filled out forms on the spot, turned them in, requesting records on what had happened. I got called on Friday of that week. They were ready. I showed up Saturday morning and picked up the records. I found the records to be woefully inadequate. There was an intake memo which simply said euthanasia and intake memo. There's a form here that says gray tabby, nothing else marked. Not neutered male, female, not scanned, nothing. There's nothing on this form. Finder information form, which has the name of Carol and the address. That is the owner of the property and the property in which he is found. But Carol did not bring the cat in. The cat was brought in by Kurt Huff, who is the caretaker. Carol was a 72-year-old disabled woman who didn't drive. Because that information was so sparse and seemingly inadequate to me, on that Saturday that I was there, I asked if I could speak to a supervisor in this regard. I was shown to the office of Paul Richardson to discuss what had happened to my cat. He looked in his computer and he could find no record of any medical information on the cat. No record of what the injury was, how severe the injury was, if there was any medical exam done. Basically, there was nothing except they intook him at 8 o'clock in the morning and they put him down between 5 to 5:30 that night. That cat had been taken along with his mother and his brothers and sisters to Mesilla Valley Animal Services Center in December of 2018 for spay, neuters, rabies, chips, everything. That cat was chipped. Animal Services Center states to me, although there's nothing on the forms, that they scanned him and found no evidence of a chip. I question that since they inserted the chip themselves. I question that they tried hard enough. They either didn't try, they didn't try hard enough, or the chip was not placed at the time. But the result is that I had a cat who was dearly loved, who I would have done anything to save. He could have lived with an amputated foot if it was just a foot, and Kurt Huff says it was just a foot. I would have done anything to save that cat. Animal Services Center, when talking to Mr. Richardson, has gone so far as to tell me that I'm incorrect, that Kurt Huff couldn't have brought him in because they can only record information as to who the finder is under the name of the individual who absolutely brings that animal in. I'm saying, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Your records are wrong because Carol did not drive. And in fact, Carol was so disabled, she died the next week from a fall on her property. I have firsthand information from the gentleman who found the cat, rescued the cat, brought him in, left him under the assumption that he was going to get medical care.
Ms. Duncan, finish your thoughts, please.
I just wanted you to know that there are animals that are brought in that are chipped, that are owned, that are loved, that are being euthanized without proper medical attention. He sat in a cage for 8 hours without proper medical attention. Was euthanized without me being notified. I've done everything as an owner that I knew to do to take care of this animal and his siblings.
Ms. Duncan, I'm very sorry for your loss. Very sorry. Thank you for being here today.
Frank Bryce, President of the Humane Society of Southern.
You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First of all, I want to say, with all exceptions considered, this has been a very positive meeting. I'm very impressed with the questions you asked, the clarification we got, and the movement that's been going on. And I've been involved with this effort about 20 years now. This is probably one of the very few positive, really positive meetings I've been to, so thank you. I've got just a couple of quick things. The Check the Chip program is keeping up with our microchipping, and by the end of next month, our organization will have done 10,000 chips here in Diana County, Las Cruces, and surrounding area. That helps keep the animals out of the shelter, which is really a big deal. We need to make sure that all the organizations that are working in collaboration with the shelter are recognized for keeping animals out. Our goal, just so you know, our goal is to intercept the animals going into the shelter and not get them out of the shelter, but keep them out by doing what we do. And I'm finalizing 2 adoptions today. Not to give us any undue credit, because there's a lot of organizations doing that, but a lot of the effort that we see in lowering numbers and improving has to be given credit to all the organizations that are working in a collaborative effort. And that has not been an easy road to go down. Let me see here. The TNR chips, like Miss Denton, I believe her last name is Laura, that she's talking about, those are all registered with us if it's a colony, and they're registered with the company. So if there is a chip in an animal, if it's not registered at the shelter, which they want to have done, it will be registered at the company, which then reverts back to the name of the colony that it goes to. And as we're working with the task force, I think there's a meeting this afternoon, usually it's on Friday, but this afternoon, I have a stack of almost 10,000 data sheets that I'm going to take to the shelter because they want to register them at the shelter. But the fallback is they're all registered with the company. They do need to be registered correctly. And as you heard earlier today, one of the chips was registered with a veterinary clinic. that's really where somebody's probably told, hey, we chipped your animal, you need to call this number and get it registered. And they didn't do it. And it was registered with the veterinary clinic because they're the ones that sold the chip. We have that happen occasionally where they don't get in for whatever reason. We don't get a paper back to us to do it. And we go back to the company and find out who they distributed the chip to. We call the vet clinic, we get it done, and you can follow up on it. There's one question I would like to ask in addition to trying to kind of tighten up on our oversights, our errors, like the cat we're talking about. On the paperwork, it says outcomes, missing. I look at those every time, every meeting we have. I look at the missing. And all of those that go through the shelter and come out missing should have a chip. And we should have some record of how many are returned. Are all of these, I believe it's 77, that went missing from the shelter for whatever reason, for whatever category they're in, were none of them returned with a chip? It would be nice to have that particular little piece of information on there. But keep in mind that I really feel like this has been a very positive meeting. We've still got lots of problems. We are working so much better. And I meant to do this, and I apologize for putting it last. I want to commend the animal control departments. Their activities, they're working collaboratively, and all that is so impressive right now. I can't really say enough about how effective those organizations are starting to really truly network, and we need to keep that up, encourage it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, everyone. And now we go for board comments. Any comments from the board? Everyone's commented out. It's lunchtime. I have no comments. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We don't need a roll call, no. So we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.